OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, very welcome along to today's edition of OTBM. We are here every week. That I just want to clarify that we're here every week of the year, 52 weeks of the year, 365 minus Saturdays and Sundays. Owen, good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah, good, sure. Good morning. Welcome to this week's Tuesday's OTB AM.
We're going to steal an idea from the football pod with Paddy and Andy, where every week Andy Moran has a moan. I don't know why they didn't call it Moran's moan. I don't know why. Maybe we could gently suggest it. And it gets a little sting where it's just him complaining about stuff. But you want to give out about something. This is important. On the front of all the papers, there is criticism of the special treatment that the GAA is getting for the ability to have crowds at the weekend, right? And I totally understand the point that people are making. Blind Boy was saying he was doing a gig where people were sat a giant round table so that they could be 7 feet, 2 meters apart, 150 yards down the road. It might have been a bit further than that, than those scenes that we saw at Croker the other day. Interesting part of town that everybody was drinking down one of the side streets, by the way, which I'd never really seen before. So hats off to the Limerick and Cork crowd for colonising a new part of the town. Fair play to you. But is there a false equivalence going on here? Is this kind of missing the point?
That is ridiculous, the situation that he mentions there, and there are so many other different ridiculous situations that have developed over the last little while when there are other situations that have been granted more freedoms when you're comparing these two things. But it does seem that the comparisons between culture and between sport over the last little while has almost elevated itself to kind of a culture war, where these two things have quite conveniently been pitted against one another. I'm not sure if it's just a coincidence or if it's actually pretty shrewd tactics from people in power to allow the GAA to be targeted by people whose livelihoods have been put at risk, whose involvement in the entertainment industry is so important to their own lives that their livelihoods have been put at risk, and therefore they want to vent and they want to take it out on somebody. And seeing 40,000 people in Croke Park at the weekend is naturally going to annoy some people who, as you say, have to keep 7 people apart 7 metres apart 7 feet apart at their own gigs or whatever it may be. So it does seem that it's kind of descended into a point now where it is a little bit of an open season on the GAA, rather than pressing the issue as to why everybody else can't get the same thing that the GAA are getting. It seems to be about what the GAA have actually got, and I don't know. It does seem that the two things have been completely split over the last little while, that if you enjoy going to matches in Croke Park, then you can't possibly enjoy doing anything else. So I guess we have to say a very good morning to our Spotify listeners who are only here because they are looking forward to our GAA content and will never venture towards a movie podcast or towards music on Spotify, because if you like GAA, you are a bogger who doesn't like anything else. You've been brought up thinking about Mick O'Connell and Henry Shefflin, and you've never heard of
Comely
Kanye
maidens
West
dancing at the crossroads.
Exactly. You will DDI your way back down to the country after being one of the 40,000 people that have gone to Croke Park. And who is Blind Boy is probably one of the questions you're asking yourself. That is just the element that's really pissed me off over the last few days, that these two things have been pitted against each other as two entirely different things. 100% the entertainment industry has been screwed over. That has been screwed over every which way you can think of. And yes, there is preferential treatment for the GAA, but the reason why people should be angry is why that preferential treatment hasn't been shared around to everybody else, rather than trying to scale back the treatment that the GAA have been given, the avenues that have been open to the GAA, because they are good things. They're let's not take away the good things that have happened over the last little while. I accept that there are scenes that people have seen over the last little while, as you say, in the streets of Dublin or even in the stands with maskless people that will annoy people. But for me, that's a completely different conversation, and I accept that people are annoyed over that, and maybe something needs to be done. Maybe I don't know what you can even do about that, but I accept that 100%. But the very different thing is the sort of, the GAA are getting 40,000 people into the stadiums. It feels that there's a tone there saying they should never have been given that, and they also have to wait with the rest of us while we finally get given our opportunity to reopen.
Yeah.
Because we all want to go to a gig. We all want to experience normality in as many different ways as possible. And people who go to Gaelic games, of course, many of them, GAA is the most important thing in their life. But there are other important things in their life as well, and they would love for a fully vibrant entertainment industry to be back reopened in Ireland once again, and it is unfair that it hasn't been the case.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that you're happy to lobby on the part of the entertainment industry even though you're a GA fan.
And I think a lot of people are. Like, absolutely, the vast majority of people would be like that. I don't think that we are a country of people who are so one-eyed that we have one interest. And, like, maybe it's getting a little bit precious about tweets that get huge amounts of oxygen, and it pops up in your timeline, and you're like, you take it as almost as a personal slight. Maybe I'm getting too precious about it, but it is a conversation that seems to have ratcheted up over the last little while. But in fairness, it is coming from a reasonable place in the first instance, which is, hold on a minute, why are we going nowhere here and other people are getting places? Like, I understand that feeling 100%. It's just that it's completely zoned in on a reopening of a live sports industry, in fairness, distilled into one sport, which in my opinion has been a very positive thing, and which should have been happening. So, yeah, that's kind of what I think. But I don't know. There's a number of different things that you could talk about here as well. Like when it comes to the GAA, I often wonder if the GAA are actually reaping the benefits right now of not getting their elite status earlier in the year, and I guess they were probably
Some kind of trade-off that, or
they were the poor relation earlier in the year. It seemed
the politicians are trying to win back the GAA audience. Is that it? In some ways.
Possibly, and maybe those in power, like me, that has been one of the tones about this, that it's Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and people see them as the two biggest GAA parties in the country. Like, I mean, it's kind of, I guess, given it's the biggest sport in the country, it's also hard to kind of disagree with that or disagree with why
Fianna Fáil are nowhere near the biggest party
why
in
you
the
would
country.
have that. Well,
You know.
very good point. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's just this culture war that seems to have developed a little bit, which feels unnecessary to me when everybody should be on the one side in this. And as you say, very much not the biggest party in the country right now, allied with Fine Gael, also not the biggest party in the country right now, but the two main parties in government really have kind of faded into the background a little bit, like Homer Simpson backing into the bushes as the entertainment industry's correct level of anger gets pushed on areas where maybe it shouldn't be pushed on, which is, in my opinion, the GAA. And like I think that we don't want to start finding equivalences between this country and the UK, for example, but maybe we can look at full stadiums over there and say, well, maybe we can at least deserve half stadiums here.
Yeah,
maybe.
Look, that's down to Neffet, and that's down to them saying they want to jab the kids before we get to that level of reopening. And like, is that really necessary at this stage? It doesn't seem as if we've learned the lessons where we were told 18 months ago the whole point of flattening the curve was to try and create extra, or to save the ICU and to save the health system. And instead of fixing that in the last 18 months, we've been like, oh, we're ground with that. We just need to put the responsibility onto everybody else as opposed to actually spending the money on improving the health system. And if we'd done that, we'd actually be able to have, we'd be able to deal with the surge capacity that's going to come when people get sick. And unfortunately, we haven't been. The other thing is some people aren't getting jabbed. Like, if you're not getting jabbed at this point, then screw you. You know, like, screw you. Get the jab.
Yeah. And like they're all absolutely valid things, and I've seen it mentioned as well the last couple of days about maybe no antigen testing, no proof of vaccine going into the GAA games. I get why people are saying that, and for me they're very different conversations to the one that's just kind of popped up over the last couple of days, which is just a little bit annoying to be honest. So I don't know how this, like, the one concern that you would definitely have is the reopening of the entertainment industry does seem to be sacrificed for the time being, or pushed back for as long as possible, and there would be a reasonable concern on that front as to why other areas aren't being sacrificed, because like, are we going to see a reduction in the capacity in the All-Ireland football final, for example, in a few weeks if things keep going the way they are? I would venture to say not. I would venture to say that actually no, they'll keep the foot on the entertainment industry and allow that to happen. So I in a way I can kind of understand why people are saying what they're saying, but at the same time I disagree with just one little element of it.
All right. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Very quickly, and we're going to talk about this briefly today because it's going to be a topic that keeps coming up over the course of the season. There's been a lot of whining going on about the relaxation on the tackling rules in the Premier League. It is Brendan Rodgers' turn after his side got hammered last night by West Ham. 4-1 was the final score. Eoin Perez sent off, and all of the stills suggest that Eoin Perez should have been sent off, but at the same time, Brendan Rodgers isn't happy. We've heard from Solskjaer not being happy. We've heard from Jurgen Klopp not being happy. What's going on here, Eoin? Are they just whining?
Yeah, like I don't know. It has the whining gone to a whole other level over the last couple of days, the last few weeks. I understand the siege mentality that managers try and instill when they go out and face the media after a match, but there is a fine line, it seems, between that and just coming across as totally disingenuous over the last little while. And it just kind of felt it reared its head again last night when Eoin Perez made a horrible challenge that was probably accidental, but still a terrible challenge that led to him getting sent off. And it was just the incredulity of Kasper Schmeichel and his teammates and Brendan Rodgers at that moment, where it's like, just give everybody a break a little bit here. We have VAR. The referee, when it comes to red cards at the moment, will invariably arrive at a correct decision, a more correct decision than you could arrive at having seen it once. And it's just, as you say yourself, the anger is on when it comes to every little thing. The Solskjaer thing the other day, referring to soccer as potentially going in the direction of rugby over the next little while if things keep going the way they are, because Bruno Fernandes got dispossessed fairly. Seems disingenuous at very best. And then Jurgen Klopp as well, after a couple of Burnley challenges, was referring to it as WWE, or that's where you can go to get that sort of thing. Sean Dyche hitting back saying that they didn't get any bookings. So I don't know why people venture to this area here rather than, I don't know, maybe accepting that your player got dispossessed in a fair manner. And even under last year's rules, which, let's face it, aren't overly different, would also have been a play away lads situation. So it's probably just an early season laying down a marker, because all these managers feel that what goes around comes around, and if I get angry enough or create enough of a storm at this point, things might come back in my favour, which of course is absolute nonsense. All
right, one last thing here is that the Irish Independent are saying that Tyrone have been given the all clear for the Kerry match this weekend. Fergal Logan has confirmed they've been able to assemble full numbers for training in recent days and start preparing properly. He said a final assessment and a full recovery for some players will be made as late as Thursday or Friday night. Obviously, the match was deferred by 13 days after at least 17 and potentially more people were involved in this. What is the level of fear and loathing that you have at the moment about the overwhelming favouritism that Kerry have and are for this game?
Yeah, I'm not sure, did you read Tommy Conlon on Sunday?
I didn't, I missed it.
Making the point that Tyrone are very much in the long grass here, and I could see
this is the longest of long grass ever. I mean, if Tyrone provide a shock, and it will be a shock because Kerry are 7-1 on, Tyrone are as big as 11-2 to win this game after the COVID outbreak. If Tyrone somehow managed to turn over Kerry this weekend, it will be the biggest shock that I can remember in Gaelic football since, Jesus, I don't know. Maybe in game Donegal coming back to beat the Dubs in Jim Gavin's second year.
Can I ask you why is that?
Because of the COVID outbreak.
So how bad was the COVID outbreak, and how bad were the symptoms? Exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly. You don't know.
But it's like
you don't know.
It was so bad that they had to call the game off twice.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, I assume it was, but we are all assuming here.
That's what they had it verified. The GAA had it verified through medical records.
Yeah, like
Are you dubious?
No, not at all. I'm not dubious whatsoever of the veracity of the COVID positives and the close contacts whatsoever. What I'm saying is that we don't know for sure the full extent that this is going to impact on their performance. That's all I'm saying. So, I'm absolutely not.
I think it certainly, from the way they spoke about it, some players hadn't got jabbed for fear of having an impact, and so therefore, for fear of being out for missing training, a little bit of training because of the jab. I think, in retrospect, that didn't make any sense. You should have. Although maybe you were getting the Oxford AstraZeneca in the north, weren't you? Or were you getting the Pfizer? I'm not sure.
Maybe everybody who was symptomatic was in hospital and is suffering big time from this.
We've only heard of one player being hospitalised as a result of it.
But if there is more who are suffering badly from this, of course this would be the biggest shock in history. My point is just that we're actually just not sure. We're not 100% sure. We know the volume of cases and how bad it managed to infiltrate the camp on that level, and of course we know the situation with the vaccines there as well, which obviously leaves yourself more susceptible. So I'm just saying that, of course, if things have desperately impacted their health over the last little while, 7-1 on is actually even long odds for Kerry at this point. But
Kerry -7.
is a -7. Wow. It just feels that you look at those two teams going head to head and 7-1 on just seems like a crazy thing. But of course, it's not independent from the context of what we've seen over the last little while.
So you're terrified, basically. That's what I'm hearing.
I'm not terrified at all.
I'm hearing terror that this is going to be a buzzsaw that Kerry walk into at the weekend, like, oh, for God's sake.
There will be a buzzsaw of some sort. It'll just be interesting to see how long they can sustain the buzzsaw for. And I would expect Kerry to win, no question about it, this weekend. But it's another Division 1 team. It's another Tier 1 team, if you want to say that. And one of the teams involved in the game are 7-1 on. Like, does that? I just think that's we're in a deeply unusual situation this weekend.
We are. It's going to be a practice run for Kerry to clear the cobwebs in advance of the All-Ireland final against Mayo. Sure.
Yeah, a lot of people are. I'm not going to lie. A lot of people are basically writing this weekend off, and that just adds to the whole sense of
don't do it.
Discomfort.
Don't do it.
Discomfort, yeah.
All right, 7:47 this morning here on OTB AM. We'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or of course you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. You can get us at Off the Ball AM on Twitter as well. We have a competition for you. Umbro Ireland has unveiled the new FAI centenary jersey. We've got one to give away this morning. To be with a chance to win, name this Irish-themed mystery voice.
The three most, say Leo, is that his name? The three most influential Leos of my lifetime: Messi, Da Vinci, and Leo Burdock.
Tweet us at Off the Ball with your answer, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream for us. Let's hear that one more time. He's a former captain and a friend of the show.
The three most, say Leo, is that his name? The three most influential Leos of my lifetime: Messi, Da Vinci, and Leo Burdock.
Tweet us your answer to be with a chance to win. Right, we'll have that coming up for you. A discussion on that jersey coming up for you a little bit later. Here's what's coming up actually between now and 10 a.m. on the show. We've got our all-time power rankings for this century. We've got Rory Beggan at 8:10 talking about what he expects from Tyrone this weekend. John Duggan at 8:35. We're going to talk with Johnny Courtenay from Umbro about those new Irish shirts. Brian Moore from Bellator and Pat Nevin at 9:30 talking about how he's enjoying the quality of football now that there's a little bit of physicality back in the game. So let's wait and see for what's going to happen. So, Eoin, we were going to do the always correct and unimpeachable power rankings ahead of the All-Ireland semi-final this weekend. But really, given the unknown unknowns, as Donald Rumsfeld would have said about the Tyrone scenario, things haven't changed since last week, have they?
They have not changed since last week. A lot of people really bemused by Mayo going to the top of the power rankings.
Well, Kerry are the best team in the country, are still favourites for the All-Ireland final, even though they've got to win a semi first. And
you've used that argument. Tommy used that argument, and then I listened to the football pod a little bit later last week, and it turns out both of you just robbed it off Andy Moore, and who used that argument on the football pod last week.
I had heard the football pod by the time we were doing the power rankings last week, so perhaps it was the other way around. Maybe Andy's listened to the power rankings and decided, you know what, I've got to stick to those Kerry lads in advance of the All-Ireland final.
Yeah, I don't know. It's you get rewarded for a big win like that, and that's what Mayo did. But this morning we are going to go through the top 8 teams of this century. I think there's a clear and obvious number one, obviously. So the rest of it should be pretty interesting. And this is probably, to be honest with you, I'm going to be straight up to people at home, and I'm going to pull back the curtain here a little bit. This is Ger's idea. Ger wants this as a vehicle to have a certain debate, which I expect is coming up at some point over the next little while. A debate that he just likes to have over annually. And I think he's looking to get it this morning. Is would I be right in saying that?
Well, I think that you're missing
Tyrone
the point.
versus Kerry debate.
I think that you're missing the point is that you basically invented the football power rankings as a means of moving this debate forward so that we wouldn't have to continuously have it. Because obviously it's a debate that at various stages over the last 3 years or however long we're doing the show, I've won again and again and again, and the public understands again and again and again that I have been correct. And you've invented this whole new weird paradigm with like an algorithm that is essentially made up inside your own head to establish the power rankings to try and reclaim some credit that you've lost with the Gaelic football public as a result of the ridiculous notion that you have that Kerry were the team of the noughties. But look, it is what it is. We are where we are.
What we're going to do is we're going to pick a moment in time for a team. So for a lot of these teams, it's actually a 3 to 5 year period. For example, the moment in time for the Dubs, there would be 2 separate ones. There would be the pre-2014 one, there would be the post-2014 one. And to kind of get away from the complications of that, we're allowing each county to have only one representative in this top 8. So it does rule out a couple of teams that may have ordinarily made this top 8 from different eras throughout the 20 years. But by and large, these are the best 8 teams that we have seen over the last 20 years, the century so far. And in at number 8, from my list, first off, we'll get to Jersey in just a moment, is Galway 2001. A phenomenal team, still with a beautiful hangover from the 90s, and maybe if we were doing the last 25 years,
that's the thing, isn't it?
A little bit higher.
That's the thing. So everybody from Galway is going to be open arms by the fact that they're being criminally underrated, but the very strict cut-off point of January 1st, 2000, the Y2K bug has unfortunately accounted for Galway 98. But that Galway team, I think, is criminally underrated, probably because it was such a short, brief. What's the thing about magnesium that burns and burns? What am I looking for? Jack Kerouac. That was it. That they burned so bright, and that was it. They were gone. And then no more. I think it was because the team was top heavy with our lads and young lads, and so they came together, had 4 years, 3 years, and then boof. Team broke down, and it kind of the young lads became the outlads, and they just weren't as competitive anymore. And then also Mayo arrived. But a sensational team. If you look at like literally one of the best goals that you're ever going to see in Gaelic football scored by that team, and they were involved in some massive games. They also were a bit flaky from time to time. They lost games in that you kind of felt like they should have won. That prevents them. We're nitpicking here. This is a great team, but we are nitpicking. They're my 8th team as well, to be honest. Right, okay, so we're in agreement on that. In at number 7 for me is Cork 2007 to 2010. Same? Yeah.
I was just kind of going back through this team from the year they won the All-Ireland in 2010, and it feels to me, like I could be off the mark here a little bit, it feels to me that the criticism of Cork quite a lot around that era was maybe not having a totemic inside forward or somebody like Gooch or Bernard Brogan who could really destroy a team from inside. But you look at the 6 forwards that started that 2010 final. Kieran Sheahan, Pearse O'Neill, Paddy Kelly is your half-forward line. Daniel Goulding, Donnacha O'Connor, Paul Kerrigan is your full-forward line. And right, of course, Gooch and Brogan gets into that team and takes all your frees and is the best inside forward in that. But they're all operating off a 7.5 to 8 out of 10 most times. Like that for me is a really, really strong set of forwards, and that's probably why they do eventually get over the line. I also think if Kieran Sheahan hadn't gone to play Aussie rules, what would have happened to that team? Because like his form and his trajectory at that point was absolutely stratospheric. He went quite late to Aussie rules, did he? Like compared to some of the other lads who tend to go over as teenagers, he might have been already 20, I think. Maybe he was only 19, but like what a sensational career he had. And that's the sliding doors moment for this Cork team for me is his loss. And then also again, I think it's the same point that they get over the line when Canty and a few others are at that stage of their careers where it's like, okay, this is last dance territory every year that they keep going. So I don't know, maybe in retrospect Galway should have been ahead of this team. They're close enough to each other. They are. Like the one thing about this Cork team, people talk maybe about what happened prior to 2010 and maybe I don't know, could they have taken Tyrone out in a final had they snuck past Kerry in a semi-final or actually arrived at one of those finals against Tyrone, because they did end up beating Tyrone in 2008. This particular Cork team had a beating of that Tyrone team that they could have won more beforehand. But I actually just wonder what winning in 2010, if they hadn't won in 2010, could Cork actually have been All-Ireland champions in 2011? Now, I know Kerry were licking their wounds in 11 after going out into quarter-final, and they were really hungry to win that. But I'm pretty sure Cork were pre-season favourites. I know they were All-Ireland champions, so that would make sense. But there were still very much deemed by a lot of people to be the best team in the country going into 11, that Kerry team was over the hill, and that Dublin at that time were Dublin and they were never going to win an All-Ireland. So I wonder if somebody else had taken 2010 other than the Dubs, would Cork actually have put the halt on the capital for a few years by actually winning in 2011? I don't know, it's pure conjecture. But
I don't know. They played Dublin in the semi-final in 2010, don't they? And they come back from a losing position, and then they beat the Dubs again in the league from a losing position, and that's why we were kind of overrating them. But that was the last thing of that Cork team. Yeah,
it was, and they get beaten by Mayo, I think it is, in the quarterfinals in 2011. But like just the players that they had then, in terms of like the edge they could bring, like the likes of Canty and O'Leary and Michael Shields, who was captain in 10, they were horrible players to play against, I suspect. And the players then, even like Nicholas Murphy around the middle of the park, who actually popped up on the big screen at the All-Ireland hurling final the other day. Just legendary footballers for that team, and a team that deserves an All-Ireland. It's got nothing to do with winning, deserving anything, but they definitely deserved that All-Ireland they got in 2010, even though with all the provincial champions getting knocked out in the quarter-final stage that year, it did open, it paved the way for them nicely, but they absolutely deserved it. At number 6, I've got Armagh. So I suspect this is probably a little bit higher on your list, if I'm not mistaken. But Armagh from 2000 to 2005, we were well familiar with this team. Probably the hardest men we've ever seen play Gaelic football. A team that arrived in and around, certainly around the late 90s, early 2000s, and that year in 2000 when they might have felt that they could have got to the All-Ireland final against Galway, but then to come back and actually get the business done in 2002. Again, they'll feel that 2005 in particular was a year that they could have won. They could have won it all and didn't, when they had the beating of Tyrone in Ulster, and then Tyrone end up winning the whole thing. And of course then there is 2003. So there is a very thin line between this Armagh team having their one All-Ireland, which is why I have them down in 6th, and actually getting another one or two in that period when they had their best team ever, that could have elevated this team to even greater heights.
I'm sick of that northern crowd up there set dancing. If they're, whatever the line is, if they're, we'd always set dancing twice a week. Right. It's my view that modern football, the crucible for it is the Armagh-Tyrone rivalry of the early noughties, and that what they did was they drove each other on to levels of technical and tactical proficiency that completely changed how the game was played. I think Jim McGuinness is a response to watching that happen, and his Donegal team are a response to watching that happen and trying to come up with a way to counteract what he was going to be up against in the Ulster Football Championship. You can see today in the columns where McGuinness is obsessed with keeping the Ulster Football Championship because it's somehow going to undo the work of his side, which is built on the back of particularly the Tyrone-Armagh rivalry, where finally the level of tactical sophistication caught up with the strength and conditioning at the time. Now, the strength and conditioning went too far. They all bulked up too much. They became too big, and faster teams managed to beat them as the decade wore on. But I think this rivalry is one of the founding texts of modern Gaelic football, and that's why I have Armagh higher up. They're my 4th ranked team. That's where I have that Armagh side. And
somebody's getting trolled big time here this morning. I can just feel it.
And I feel like if you were to go back, if you were to give, the debate that we were having about whether or not the Great Kilkenny team would beat this current Limerick team, you can't do it like that team then versus this team now. You have to say, you weren't here for this, were you? We were doing this last week, asking the question. The Brazil 1970 team, if you put them up against Burnley would beat them now. But if you gave them the same strength and conditioning and the diet and all that crap, and you trained them since they were 12 or 14, the way all those footballers have been trained, then obviously the Brazil football team, it's like John Giles would be able to play football today, but if you put Giles out today, he's had a zip replaced. So I think that Tyrone and Armagh team could both live in any era. I think that their footballers are of a higher quality than the footballers of Cork, for example. Galway, I think, probably would make a case that actually if you added the tactical sophistication, then on their day they could beat any of these other teams. And I can buy that. But for the sake of this, I would definitely have Armagh, that team. Bear in mind, right, they won more Ulster titles than anybody else over that period of time. And the Ulster final used to be played in Croke Park, and it would nearly fill the whole place. And maybe it did fill the place a couple of times. So I don't know. Those games are just burned into my mind as a high watermark for tactical sophistication, the development and evolution of the game, and all the stuff that comes afterwards.
I actually agree with that point, and that's why I've gone for Donegal ahead of Armagh in this context. And I'm not sure if I presume that Donegal are 6 or 5 for you in your list, that they're not in the top 4.
They're fifth.
They're fifth, right? So you've gone for Armagh ahead of Donegal, because I do think that Armagh and Tyrone elevated the Ulster Championship to a level that we hadn't seen before. But I think it's a constantly moving thing, where in the early 90s, the Derry Down, Donegal teams, and Tyrone, in fairness, to a certain degree, all accelerated Ulster football to a whole new level because of their competitiveness. Early 2000s, there were these 2 great teams going toe-to-toe. That does the exact same thing. And then in the early 2010s, Donegal kind of take the torch and run with it on their own, because they've got designs on winning the whole thing, and they're sick of not being in the conversation. 20 years was way too long. And McGuinness then brought it to a whole new level. And for me to put them ahead of Armagh, it's as much to do with 2014 as it is to do with 2012. And 2012 was obviously their crowning glory, of course. But beating that Dublin team in 2014 and reading everything that Jim McGuinness has said about the way they thought about that week, the way they had to get themselves up for it, and the master plan that he devised in order to win that and to take down what would become the greatest team of all time, I think just elevates them to just a level above Armagh, the same number of All-Irelands. And yes, Armagh in the summer of 05 did get one over Tyrone, and they had other great moments as well, and came close in 2000, as I mentioned. But Donegal win this on the tiebreaker of 2014 for me.
Look, we are definitely splitting hairs here, and I can see why you're doing that. But I feel like Donegal are building on what came before them. So they're standing on the shoulders of giants, and that's the bit for me. The point about the early 90s, right? Those teams had brilliant individuals and played the football of the day and had incredible pace and power. And yeah, they were a product of the competition, I think, and just how prepared you arrived in Croke Park by the time you'd come through Ulster, as opposed to changing the game. I feel a little bit like Armagh and Tyrone don't get the credit for changing the game. McGuinness is an iteration of that. Again, sensational players, amazing game plan, one of the all-time brilliant matches where they beat the Dubs, like one of the best sports events I'm ever going to be at. And they did it with brio, and they did it in that year. They did it with such an attacking flair. So I guess I can see your point, but I'm sticking with mine. I'm
just going back through the path to the final as well for Donegal in 2012, because you've got to remember kind of who they beat and the era of football that they're operating in here. Like, some people could view it as football being in transition, and maybe that's why Cork picked up an All-Ireland in 2010. But I think come 2012, the transition was moving more towards the blue wave coming from Dublin, and maybe even one final sting from Kerry that they were looking to do. And Donegal ended up beating Kerry, Cork and Mayo to win the All-Ireland. Of course, it would be better if they'd beaten Dublin all the way, but that's their All-Ireland series, and that's a pretty impressive run to win that title in 2012. So they had no soft games, and they come out of Ulster. So I think that was a really, really impressive path to the final that year. They'd beaten Tyrone in the semi-final of the Ulster Championship as well. So that's what is it, 3 or 4 out of the top 5 other teams in the country that Donegal had actually put to the sword that year.
No, fair play. They beat Kerry in the quarter-final, Cork in the semi, and Mayo in the final, is it?
Yeah.
Right.
So it was some path to the final, but that is Donegal 2011 to 2014.
My case for Armagh is Ulster title 2000, 2002, 2004, 2005, 2006. That's 5 Ulsters in. They also won 99. So that's 5 Ulsters in the first 6 years of the 2000s, when they're up against Tyrone, who, as we all know, are the team of the noughties. So.
Number 4, I'm just not responding to that just yet, because this is why you're here, isn't it? Just I've done my meditation this morning. I've woke up calm, let's just say. Number 4, Mayo, 2012 to 2017. Didn't win an All-Ireland. It damages their credentials naturally. That might change this year, but I've just kind of looking. The case has been well made. The case has actually been made in the past that Mayo are the second best team of all time, let alone the second best team of this century, which, of course, these games that they played against Dublin were incredible. And what Limerick showed at the weekend was that when you are an all-time great team, you can absolutely pulverise an opposition on the biggest day of all, because the opposition comes in first of all, a little bit less familiar to All-Ireland final day as you, and second of all, kind of like a deer in the headlights at times because they are coming up against a great team. And Mayo deserve massive credit for never falling that way to Dublin. And in fact, they should have beaten Dublin on multiple occasions, whether like it was 16 or 17 or even the semi-final in 15. On all three of those occasions, like the law of averages would suggest that Mayo should have won at least one of those games, but they didn't, and they're in fourth place for me here. Like, I do think the 17 final was possibly the greatest All-Ireland final ever, one of the greatest games of football ever played, and to be a half of that while kind of helping the greatest team of all time to new heights, I think that they deserve to be in the conversation for sure, but I just can't put them ahead of Tyrone, Kerry and Dublin. I can't really see an argument for that. I'm not sure if you've gone differently.
I had that Mayo team actually at 6th in my list.
Right.
And I've definitely made that case before where, you know, they do push the Dubs, but ultimately I think that they get deducted points for never getting over the line, right? Like,
Definitely.
it's hard. I don't know. It's very hard because there's years where that was it 2017 where they played 10 games where they draw with Kerry and beat them in a replay. They go to extra time against Derry and Cork, and then they draw with Dublin in the All-Ireland final, and it's like, oh my God. So maybe that team is actually one of the greatest teams of all time, but maybe they're one of the greatest teams of all time never to win an All-Ireland. And it's that bit that takes them down the line.
The greatest team of all time to never win an All-Ireland. I think it's pretty clear. I do think that this year's team, if they win it, is different.
Sorry, they drew at Roscommon as well.
They did in the quarter-final.
Yeah.
And
they annihilated them in the replay.
Yeah, and they surrendered an early lead. Like, you look through that team in 2017, and you just, like, even just looking at 48 minutes, Donny Vaughan, red card, like, that is, for me, just such a pivotal moment in the direction of this team, because with 15 men on the pitch, I forgot it was as early as the 48 minute, to be honest with you. I thought it was 10, 15 minutes later than that, with 15 men on the pitch for the duration of that game.
Would John Small had been sent, or somebody had been sent off, had they, already for the Dubs?
Small had been, and
so all they need to do is see out like a 5-10 minute period, and then they'll have an extra man. Now, the Dubs with a man less, turns out they're always good for a draw in an All-Ireland final with a man less.
There, I guess the way this game concluded, it's not too dissimilar to 19, I suppose, where Dublin seemed to edge their way back into things, and I guess the difference was that Rock missed a free in 19 and he scored it in 17. It was a more central free, but there are multiple parallels that you can make between 17 and 19, to be fair. But yeah, for me, you're kind of looking at that now as well as a little bit of an era for Mayo that is totally different now. The one that we'll be looking at if they do get over the line this year is almost like looking at the Dublin team of 17 to 19 compared to the Dublin team of 2013. It feels different. Obviously, it's a different manager with James Horan back at the helm, and those sort of old warriors, as I mentioned, the likes of Donny Vaughan and Seamie O'Shea being so central to things. David Clark in goals, Keith Higgins at corner back. Like, that is just a different era of footballer. And I think in 17, before that final as well, we were kind of analysing it in a similar way to the way we were analysing the game a few weeks ago, where we thought that Mayo, this could be the time where they get rolled over. And it never happened to them. It just never happened to them in those games. And yes, it did happen in a semi-final in 19, but as I say, I think things were different then. But throughout that era, 15, 16, 17, and you can probably throw the previous games into the mix as well, when they came up against Dublin, who will be at number one, no surprises there in this list, they never rolled over, and I think they deserve credit for that, but not enough to get them into the top three. And I'm just going to list off my top three here because we all know who the three teams are. So at number 3 for me is Tyrone, 2003, 2008, absolutely outstanding team, fully deserving of their medals. And at number 2 is Kerry, 04 to 09, and at number 1 is Dublin, 2015 to 2020. So that's what I've gone for. You've gone for what, Cher?
I've gone for Kerry 3, Tyrone 2, and the Dubs at number 1.
At least you've given Kerry their due into the top 3 there. I was quite worried that you would leave them off the podium entirely.
I mean, there's definitely a case. Armagh obviously beat them in an All-Ireland final, gave them a massive head start, missed a penalty and all for them, and still won the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing. Now, in fairness, this is different to a couple of the other conversations we've had, because when we were talking about the team of the decade, I would always bring the 2000 team into things, because I think a decade is 10 years and you should be judging 10 years rather than just 5 years. maybe Kerry's case in this is hampered by the fact that that particular team, we're talking about the late 2000s here, goes up against Tyrone in that exact same period as well.
How does that end?
Well, we know that Tyrone beat Kerry, but I still think that Tyrone's inability to ever win back-to-back All-Irelands is a black mark against them, because we have just spent the last 24 hours hailing Limerick for finally being able to go back-to-back. They've done their 2 in a row. Okay. We saw how tough it was for them in 2019.
Yeah.
Back-to-back All-Irelands are not an easy thing.
Back-to-back All-Irelands now in hurling with the round robin, where you actually have to play all the good teams in Munster or Leinster, is obviously a bit trickier than even it was under the old system. I'm looking at the various years. So, like, again, we're picking nits here. The Kerry team had some of the best footballers you're ever going to see. I just feel like they didn't have the tactical fluency, they didn't have the sophistication on the line that Tyrone or Armagh had at that point. I think that if you were to, I don't know, if Eamon Fitzmaurice had actually been the manager as opposed to playing, then it would be very interesting to see exactly what would have happened in those games against Tyrone and Armagh. But, like, you can't deny there was a fairly handy path to All-Irelands on a couple of separate occasions, and Kerry at various points managed to, like, take the circuitous route because they took Cork for granted. And Cork were a decent team, in fairness. But so what, 06, you win 06? Yeah,
06.
06, okay. So 06, beat Waterford in the first round, beat Tip in the semi-final, Cork beat you in the Munster final. And so it's...
Kerry were in trouble that year.
It's through to the qualifiers. I haven't even talked about 09 just yet, so wait till we get to 09. In the qualifiers, you enter at what stage? The second round? I'm just trying to find... No, it's the third round here. Or is it the fourth round?
Fourth round, because it's provincial, the losers, I guess.
Really tough game at home against Longford. Mighty Longford.
Then who did they beat next year?
4-11 to 1-11.
Who did they hammer next?
In 06, they hammer... They beat Armagh, okay? So 3-15 to 1-13. And that's the end of the Armagh team. They're over
the end of the Armagh team now, is it? And who ended that Armagh team?
Well, the previous season in 05, when they didn't win the All-Ireland, you'd say Tyrone would have ended that. It would have broken their spirit and broken their soul.
1 point off Tyrone after beating them in Ulster?
Yeah, but it was the end. It was the end of the team. Sure, Geezer's about 40 at that stage. And then you play Cork again in the semi-final. Does it count playing Cork in Croke Park, where, you know...
So you were
Cork
kind of...
smelling salts. And then Mayo in the final. And look, you know... putting Mayo out of their misery in an All-Ireland final. Fair play to you, lads. You've done that now. The humane killer comes out, and in this instance, it's Donaghy and Brosnan and Gooch who each score 1-2, and Darren O'Sullivan I think scores 1-2 in that game as well. So that is a hammering in 06.
Yeah.
Is that the second hammering against Mayo? Is there a hammering against Mayo in 04 as well?
Like, I mean, it's not a hammering, but it's a healthy win. For sure. Like, you always use this as a stick to beat Kerry with, the fact that they...
And the All-Irelands, yes.
No, the fact that they won, that they hammered teams in All-Ireland finals, that the fact that they have the 3 biggest winning margins in All-Ireland finals this century. Again, let's talk about our analysis the last couple of days of the hurling.
No.
Kilkenny in 08, great. Limerick in 2021, great. Why? Because they hammered teams off the park on the biggest day of all.
No. I mean...
Why are you using that as a reason to take away from Kerry?
Mayo choked.
So, let's just analyse it. If we're going to be consistent here a little bit, we need to talk about Tyrone's record against Mayo and Tyrone's record against Cork then as well. Both of those counties had beaten Tyrone when Tyrone were All-Ireland champions. The other team to beat Tyrone, they were All-Ireland champions in that decade, which I'm sure you'll have off the hand here, was Laois. So, like, this is the standard, like, that we have to be talking about here. If you're going to use Cork and Mayo as weak teams that couldn't do anything against Kerry in All-Ireland final, they're weak teams that took Tyrone out as All-Ireland champions, and that is the level that their title defence was on. So, for me, that's where the debate comes down.
You obviously completely underestimate the difficulty that there is in winning an Ulster title. It's understandable. You're from Munster. You don't really care about anything other than Kerry's All-Ireland victories, but that's fine. That's the list, right? We'll have to open this now to the public because we've unfortunately run out of time. I didn't even get to go through the backdoor path that involved Antrim and Sligo and Longford, who nearly knocked out in 2009, where you played one team, it was the Dubs.
They didn't,
and that was pretty handy. You're right, they didn't. Kerry, with their 30 All-Irelands, did not lose to Antrim.
They didn't suffer
and their 0 All-Irelands.
The Laois embarrassment that a certain other county that you have above them did.
14 minutes past 8. You can give us your views in the YouTube comments if you want. We'd love to hear from you, particularly the annoyed Kerry fans, the fact that you're not the second best team of the last 20 years. If you want to get in touch with us, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Of course, you can leave a comment in the YouTube stream. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to be back talking football with Rory Beggan.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Football is back.
The Premier League on OTB.
Ball to Sterling! Raheem Sterling!
Exclusive Premier League live commentaries every Sunday. The very best expert analysis on your phone and for free. Download the OTB Sports app now.
Car insurance is boring, but you don't have to be. Get Set Go is the kind of car insurance you can sort in a few minutes online, then bounce on with your day. Are you ready for Quick Start Insurance? Get a quote now at getsetgo.ie. MCL Insurance Services Ireland Limited, trading as getsetgo.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
The Zone, home of the game changers. They defy odds, logic, reason. They fight convention and bloody the nose of tradition. Stream your boxing your way. Anytime, anywhere, only on The Zone. Game changed. Visit DAZN.com.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, so what do you do when you're faced with the challenge of Tyrone? I'm delighted to say Rory Beggan is with us to help us talk about this. Rory, good morning to you. How are you?
How are you, Joe? How are you getting on?
Yeah, pretty good. Before we get into that, maybe you could settle our little debate there. Who was a better team, the Tyrone team of the Naughties or the Kerry team of the Naughties?
Tight one there. Tight one, lads. We probably have to go maybe Tyrone team, probably.
You're a good man, Rory Beggan. You're a good man. You are also correct.
Yeah, I just probably think that those All-Ireland wins over Kerry and stuff. And I'll have to go with them there, lads. Sorry, Eoin.
I think they changed football. That's why I rate them so highly. And look,
Route 1 into Kieran Donaghy wasn't changing football enough for you.
no,
was
it wasn't. That's the thing. I mean, look, it was amazing. Of course, if you've got Donaghy, you're going to use it. And why the hell wouldn't you? And everybody wanted the Donaghy. So, but look, to be honest, it kind of feeds nicely into the conversation we're having at the moment. That the Ulster Championship, because it is so competitive, you have to be constantly innovating and you have to change things, and you can't do what you've always done. Otherwise, you're going to lose year in, year out. And I think that's evidenced by watching what Niall Morgan has done and watching what you've done as well. Like, I guess you guys must be under pressure every winter to try and come up with something new.
Yeah, look, everybody knows the competitiveness of Ulster and how tough it is to get out of it. And especially with, it's not just even Tyrone and Donegal now. You've seen Calvin win at the other in 2020 there, and even likes of Armagh now coming up. There's a lot more teams than just it was Tyrone and Donegal and Monaghan. A lot more teams are thinking now that they can get out and win Ulster and stuff. So every other team's coming with something this year. Armagh brought this kicking game a lot this year, a lot of intensity around the middle third. You've seen with the likes of maybe us and Tyrone, especially with myself or Niall coming out. I just think you need to take something else to the table now that's going to maybe upset the opposition, and it's something that we felt we needed to adapt more to our game. Bring more to our game was maybe trying to get up the field a wee bit more, getting more scores from our forwards and stuff, and it was something that we felt we were doing a lot throughout the league, was getting a lot of scores and different scores on the board. People would always put the knife at us that we are too reliant on Conor McManus, but I felt we had a lot more players step up this year. But just unfortunately, when it got to Ulster, we were one step short just to get through against Tyrone. But as you said, it's a very competitive province with a lot more teams confident now that they can go and win an Ulster Championship, which makes it so competitively.
I'd say, Rory, when you started out, at 12, 14, 15 points in a game would probably have not guaranteed victory, but it would have been thereabouts. Over the last 12 months, things have changed completely, and you need to put up big scores. So what happened? Why did that change occur, and what do you put it down to?
Yeah, I think my first Ulster final was 2013, and I think we hit 15 points in that game to win it. And I think in the 14 Ulster final, Donegal hit 15 points to our 1-9, and it was slowly then starting to get bigger scores, and there was a couple of landslide victories in them Ulster finals up until maybe the last couple of years. And like even seen in the Armagh game this year with us in the semi-final, like the half-time score was a hurling score, and I think that's just teams are coming out of that mould now of sitting every man back and trying to hold out leads and stuff. I think teams are now starting to try an open, expansive game of kicking, playing more people up top, and I think they feel this is the way that you're going to win in All Ireland. Yes, you need a steely defence, and you need, but I think your defence starts from the top, and it's by putting teams under pressure further out the field. And I think a lot of teams now are well versed, and have trained a lot trying to break down blanket defences, and they're doing that in probably every training session. And when teams come up to set up against them in that shape, when you come into a championship game or whatever, I think teams are well versed and well trained now and well coached to break these down. And I think teams are now sort of trying to. It's just becoming a bit of a shootout now, and who can score more, and that was so evident this year. Maybe not so much our Ulster final in a way, but even if you've seen the Armagh game and maybe the Tyrone Donegal game and stuff, it was a lot more teams are playing that open game now, and it's a lot more exciting to watch.
I guess that increases the importance of the goalkeeper as well. Like, I haven't checked the statistics, but I assume that means more shots, more kickouts.
Yeah, a lot more kickouts, and it's not a case that you're just tapping the ball out anymore. You have to find those kickouts. A lot of teams are putting big presses on your kickouts now, so it makes it more interesting, obviously for the viewers and stuff, to see more 50-50 kickouts. But it's you're going to see a lot more of keepers trying to find them long range 100% possession kickouts, and it's great to see it that every team's putting a big focus on their kick out press now, and even it's a great challenge for us. It's sometimes it can be frustrating when you have to tap the ball out maybe 15 yards to your cornerback and try and work it up past 15 players on the opposition team. So it's good though when teams press up and you do get that longer kick out. You're away on the attack. Teams aren't set up, and you have a better chance of getting a goal or a point. So it's probably a lot more enjoyable to play in as well, I suppose. And not whenever your team banging and the opposition team's banging over point after point after point, and you're constantly kicking the ball out. But it is more enjoyable to play in when your team's doing the damage as well.
Because we had Eamon Fitzmaurice on with us before the season began, Rory, and he was talking about obviously every team now have a plan to press the opposition goalkeeper, and he reckons that the next innovation, which is currently underway, is that goalkeepers are trying to find ways over the press, and that they may actually leave a couple of extra bodies in the opposition half when they're on their own kick out. Is that something you did with Monaghan this year?
It's something we tried. We tried a couple of times. Only like some of the presses we did come up against this year were it wasn't that aggressive that we had to leave bodies in behind. It was just a case that teams went really man-to-man and went really aggressive on it. I think a lot more teams are doing the man-to-man approach, but just really getting a hold on their man. But it's not something that we really came across, that we had 3 or 4 extra men in behind the press that we could try. We tried a couple of long ones this year that if we did beat a good few guys, that it was a 50-50 over, say, you've taken out maybe 8 Armagh players and you've got a 50-50 in your half-forward line, that you win it. It's high reward, low risk that if you lose it. So it's definitely something I think next year you'll see a lot more of teams just pressing way up and forcing the keeper into a long 50-50. That's what teams are looking for now. And as I said, it's not something that we came across loads this year, but I expect a lot to happen next year.
Have you seen any other innovations from the other teams when you've been out of the championship, and in terms of what they're doing? Is anybody trying something new that you're like, oh, that's a bit interesting?
Not particularly, not that I've noticed in the games that I've watched. Only the one game that I've watched since we've lost the Mayo Dublin game, but I noticed that Dublin tend to do it a lot, is sort of take everyone out past the 45 and leave nobody inside the 45, and it sort of leaves the opposition at do we stay in, do we come out with them and then they'll be just in a foot race to a short kick out. It's something that I've seen a lot happening. with the Dubs especially, and I can see a lot of more teams trying it, because you're leaving a lot of Dublin players, out in a certain area, and then Dublin are trying to beat you in a foot race to try and win it. So that's one of the ones I've seen, and then obviously it's the one with the keeper coming out into the space that the midfielders aren't occupying, to sort of put out them long options into the pockets. So it gives the forwards a really good chance to press and get really tight to their man, that they know they're not going to be beat over the top because somebody's in that area. I haven't really seen many innovations, to be honest.
That's interesting. And I think that's something you guys would have done as well, where on the opposition kick out everybody pushes up, and you're essentially the point man for you're the end of the press, but you're making sure that everybody else feels confident going forward with the press.
Yeah, like there's nothing worse than players going really high and pressing on their man and doing their job really, and then bang, someone's made a run into a space 60 yards and heading towards your goal, and there's nothing more demoralising of it, because you'd rather they just win it in the corner back line and having to work past all these. But I think when Niall probably done it against us in the first half in the Ulster final, it sort of blocked off them sort of runs into that pocket, and we maybe just didn't engage him enough. And I think obviously Niall's got the licence to maybe go and keep going and maybe go up as far as he can if he wants. You've seen that there. He tried to press one of our full-backs at one stage in that game, but if you have a goalkeeper who's confident to go and contest a kick out, if it does come out his side, then I think it's a valuable asset to have in your team. That if you're cutting off them long ones into the pocket that can cause a lot of danger, then I think you're in the right way to breaking down a opposition's kick out strategy.
When you're contributing to open play, Rory, how do you weigh up whether or not you go?
I think if you see space and it's probably not, I don't like to maybe be caught in the middle a lot. I sort of like to get maybe a lot on the wings, that I can sort of play that long ball in, or if it's a case, I'd like just to get it, try and just maybe ease the pressure on our defenders if they're being under pressure from the man they're marking. I just tend to be that outlet for them and try to hit a space to maybe spread the play or whatever it is. I try not to get involved as much in the attacking sense, so I leave that to the players who are more competent with the ball and are more competent of kicking a pass. But I'm just there to be that person that, right, these players are struggling, they're being pinned to the sideline here, let me get the ball and let's get it switched. That's why I want to be out there, is just to ease the burden on these defenders, to try and get the ball switched and try and get an attack going, maybe the other side where there's maybe not as many of the opposition. So that's one of the main reasons. But I just tend to, if I see space, to try to get into it and try and just get the play going the other side. That's a big part of what I try to do.
Is it planned at all? Is it a conversation with Banty at all? Was it conversations you were having with Malachy a few years ago about when you go and how to contribute?
Yeah, it's small conversations. It's not built into our team meetings or anything. It's just small conversations with the managers in regards to, I don't want to overstep it either. Like, I always say, when do you want me to go, or should I go with this at these stages in the games and stuff? And it's just small conversations with the coaches and stuff, and they'll set me in the right path. I don't want to be a case that I'm going to do it against the manager's wishes or anything. So, as you said, it's just little small conversations with them to make sure that I'm contributing in the right way. And then I'll come at half time and I'll say, look, is this causing a problem to the opposition? Is this slowing us up? If it's the case that it's slowing up our attacking play, I tend to stay out of it then and allow the rest of them to do it. But usually you do it a lot more in the last 10 minutes, maybe when you're chasing a game. You're becoming that extra player, that overlap. And that's when I tend to do a lot more of that attacking and extra man, is when we're probably chasing the game with about 10, 15, 20 minutes to go.
It's funny, it makes a lot of sense when you talk about it like that, but it probably in the future is going to be the case where keepers decide to do it from the start to create that overlap, because if it makes sense at the end, it probably also makes sense at the start. What's next? What is the next evolution of this, Rory, do you think?
Yeah, as you said, it's probably going to be from the start. Now, that's a lot of fitness work over the winter to do, but that's probably going to be the next evolution of it. It's just going to be a keeper who's confident, who's got confident on the ball, who's confident to maybe take people on, who's confident to tackle, stuff like that. There, I think it's just going to evolve a lot over the next couple of years, and as you said, you're going to see a lot more keepers probably firing up 1 or 2 points in play, which is going to be the norm. I think just that's the way it's going to go. Like, you know, keepers, a lot more keepers you see are playing probably outfield for the club and are confident to go into that situation. If a keeper can kick a ball off a tee and gain possession and is confident on the ball out the field, I think, you know, that's going to be probably the most important areas of a goalkeeper compared to maybe shot stopping and high ball and stuff like that.
What do you expect then from Niall Morgan this weekend, Rory? Because it does seem that if Kerry have an Achilles heel that is yet to be exposed, it is going to be that traction engine of a boot firing it over the press that is going to be one way to beat them.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, he's going to be so important this weekend in regards to firstly just being that extra man coming out of defence. Kerry, you know, again, like to adopt the high press from the top. But again, it's very hard to press when a team of an extra player looking to be on the ball. With Niall being that extra man, so you know that's going to be a big important part. And people tend to forget Niall has a really long boot of him as well out of the hands. You know, he can get that ball up the field 60 yards, no problem outside the boot, and he's done that a few times this year. And that's going to be a big option if Kerry are pressing high and Tyrone have won their short, and he gets the ball and he hits, say, could be Matty Donnelly or Cal McSheahan, whoever it is, you know, out in the opposition 45, you know, how much pressure that is eased on Tyrone. And, you know, they've got a Kerry defence who maybe aren't well set up at the moment. You know, that's going to be a big part of what I think Niall can offer the weekend. But again, his kickouts, you know, maybe Tyrone's Achilles heel when they come up against these teams is they hadn't had that, you know, option long out the pitch to hit those long ones against Kerry. And Kerry would always be seen as this big team around midfield. But I think now with the likes of Kennedy, Conor McKenna, even Matty Donnelly, Con Kilpatrick, these boys are now an option to go long. And I remember reading Niall's article, I actually read it after Dustin finally talked about that. He talked about that he's happy now that he has that option, that if he goes 50-50, Tyrone will compete with it. So I think if he'll have no problem, if Kerry have a real high press and they're not getting away, he'll have no problem hitting 50-50 to them boys and confident that they will win it. So I think that's a big change in Tyrone in the last number of years.
What were you thinking when Robbie Henley was standing over the retaken 45? What did you expect to happen?
Very impressed with how he handled it. Very impressed. I with the way the first free was taken and how much he missed it by. I was worried that, you know, it's hard to maybe refocus yourself and get that composure. But I was just delighted for him that it went over. I can't actually remember what I was thinking at that time. You know, I wanted him to score. I wanted to go to extra time. Because I'd be pally enough with Rob, and you know, I was delighted to see him to get that. And you know, he was striking them well. He was striking them well throughout the game, and I just felt he maybe mishit that one. I was just hoping that he would have got his composure just to strike that one, and he struck it so well. But just delighted for him, really. After, you know, he's had a couple of tough times in Croke Park, especially against Dublin, so it's nice to put that to bed, really.
Liam Sheedy's in the paper today in the Examiner talking about how the Limerick hurling team are in everybody's heads, and I guess in football for the last 7 years, really, the Dubs were in everybody's heads significantly to try and, you know, you've got to build your game plan for you guys to get out of Ulster, but after that happens you must have some kind of game plan that you're working on to try and counteract what Dublin were doing. And then this year Cluxton isn't part of that anymore. As a goalkeeper, when Cluxton came out of that setup, and this isn't a knock on Evan Comerford at all, but did it take some of the sheen and the power and the mythology away from the Dubs?
Team seen it as a chance, yeah. I definitely do. And as you said, it's not a knock on Evan Comerford. I thought he acquitted himself very well this year in the Dublin setup. I just think he had that period after half time when Mayo really had to chase it. Like, you know, I thought they really put him under pressure at times. He hit some absolutely brilliant kickouts in the game, but in regards to, you know, when teams have come up against Cluxton, I think Tomas O'Shea put up a stat in RTE before that game to talk about Cluxton's kickouts in the second half of games against Mayo throughout the years. Something like 47 kickouts he'd hit in those games, and he did. The Dublin team had won 42 of them. That's an amazing stat, absolutely unbelievable stat, and that just goes to show what he brought to that team. That composure when teams were pressing, that composure when the Dubs were under the cosh. Like, He brought that presence, that leadership, and that's maybe something that Evan doesn't just have just yet, but something that he could gain over the next couple of years. But I think that's where teams have thought, yeah, we have a chance now. We can really put Dublin under pressure on their own kickouts in that last 10 minutes, where it would have been a certainty really for Cluxon to nail them.
And when Mayo knocked them off, I presume there's it's an electric jolt through teams like Monaghan, I would say, like Armagh, like any of those teams who feel like they're coming, that actually the All-Ireland is there over the next couple of years. There is no super team anymore.
Oh, there is no, like, I don't want to be writing the Dubs off. Like, Dubs were beat in 2014 and went on and that amazing run. So it's like, I don't know if we can see Dublin doing that again, but you know, Kerry have got a lot better, Mayo have got a lot better, Tyrone have got a lot better. Look, we've got better, Donegal have got better. As you said, there's a lot more teams thinking they can win All Ireland now, and you know that makes it a lot tougher. It makes it a lot tougher to get out of Ulster, because all these teams now think that they can go and to win an All Ireland. So look, every team's going to be raising their game now this year, thinking that they have a chance now of winning it more so than the last number of years. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how Dubs react to it next year and how they approach it. But yeah, as you said, a lot of teams have joked in them now to get a game plan ready to try and contest for firstly a provincial title, but then move on to bigger things.
Rory, it probably seems a little bit trivial at this point, looking back on your kick-out strategy this year, given the tragedy in Monaghan earlier this year before the Armagh game. I know that the Month's Mind Mass for Ogie Duffy was at the weekend. From your own perspective, from the team's perspective, Rory, just how tough were those few weeks from the Armagh game and then into the Ulster final?
Yeah, it was very tough, very tough. I remember just so clearly that when the news broke, it was obviously the morning of the Armagh game. It was the night before obviously it happened, but it was the morning before I heard it. I woke up to go to the toilet, I think it was around 6 o'clock, and there was just a text on the phone from somebody just telling me what had happened, and I just was wide awake from when I seen that. I just couldn't, in disbelief a lot more so that had happened. We had watched this man lead his team to an Ulster final the night before, and to go into to get that news the next morning was just could not believe it. And you know, we had to focus ourselves for a game against Armagh that day. And I remember when we got into the hotel, Seamus, he handled it really well with the players. We spoke about it. We didn't just brush it on the cup. We spoke about it, and we had some of the 21s involved in our panel, and to make sure that they had someone who could talk to in that period was huge. But even it just shook the whole county. It shook probably a lot of people outside the county throughout Ireland. And you seen that the funeral, like the numbers that were out, like the whole town was packed, lying in the streets. And he was a leader in the minor teams. He was a leader in the 21s, and you can see he had so much respect among his players, among his friends and stuff like that there. And it just goes to show the impact he had in modern football at such a young age. And he was, he's destined for great things with modern senior footballers. And it's devastating that we'll never see him again. But it was really, really tough couple of weeks for everybody in Monaghan, and it was just a case that we wanted to do him proud. And I thought the 20s team in that Ulster final, put in an absolutely unbelievable performance. To go through all that and put in that performance, I was heartbreaking for them that they couldn't get the win, but they really done their captain proud in that game with the performance to put in. And it was tough that we couldn't get a trophy for him over that weekend, but I'm sure he's proud of every single one of them boys.
Rory, in times like this, we always say, put sport in context, but actually the outpouring that sport allowed people to come out, and we need sport more than ever in times like this.
You do. It just shows how much the GAA, how much power it has in the community, how it brought everybody together. The scenes, like the funeral, it really sticks with me. You had the down 20s down that time. I know they were playing them in the Ulster final. Some of the Donegal 20s were down. The GA president was down. Like everybody was wearing GA jerseys on the streets, all Mon and Harps jerseys, all Ogie number 6 jerseys, and it just goes to show how everybody comes together and how the GA is such a big part of this as well. Gaelic football is a big part of his life, and everybody rallied around the family and stuff like that after the news, and I'm sure the family took a lot. We've seen Brendan has spoke a lot in the last maybe week or two, and the strength that he's had to come out and speak about it, especially at half time in the Ulster final. He was talking to TG Cahir, and he was Norty really won last week as well, and the strength that he has had, but the amount of people that have shown condolences to that family over the last number of weeks has been phenomenal, and just goes to show how much the GAA has been a big part of that.
No, for sure. Rory, thanks a million for sharing that with us, and also for talking to us this morning. Cheers.
Thank you.
It's Rory Beggan there, giving us some thoughts on the weekend's game, the general situation of the game at the moment, and also paying testimony to Ogie Duffy. It's 41 minutes past 8 this morning here. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the number. Or of course you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream as well. I'll run you through the newspaper headlines very quickly. We can start with otbsports.com if we have it. If we don't, I'll give you the back pages there. Yeah, Clare GA recommend fresh 3-year term for Brian Lohan. Hopefully he accepts that and everybody moves on. They've a bit to go yet. That's Eddie Brennan talking about whether Limerick are contenders for the all-time greatest title. Liam Cahill has been approached regarding the Tipperary hurling vacancy, and he's got the endorsement of his predecessor in the Examiner today. And Jack Byrne, it looks like, is on his way out of Applewell. Hopefully he gets a move before the transfer window shuts. I don't know if actually the transfer window matters if you're coming from Cyprus, but it probably would do if you're going to England. There's some talk he'll go to England before he joins FC Charlotte, who are joining the MLS, the Irish Independent back page. Tyrone given all clear for Kerry. That's Fergal Logan speaking with Colin Key, saying that they are good and ready to go. Exit door open for Aubameyang, and Harrington Maguire call up a big deal for women's golf. It's huge. Clare to offer Lohan 3 more years as Tip I Cal. That's what we would expect. Hopefully that'll be ratified soon. The Mirror, dementia, we're terrified. Legends of 70s, 80s and 90s football back Head for Change campaign to protect against brain injuries, as many players admit they panic when they forget a name. Mikhail Antonio cut out to be number 1. Mikhail Antonio?
Yeah, I think so. All hail King Antonio. Did you see a celebration with the cardboard cutout?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Right there.
That's and a cut out above. West Ham 4, Leicester 1. Mikhail breaks record as Hammers go top. Arsenal interested in Kieran Trippier. Mo go zones. Salah and Prem stars to be blocked from World Cup qualifiers. This is they're not having it. The Liverpool hierarchy are not having him going. Back page is shut your mouth, Jurgen Klopp. Daesh slams Klopp's name checking. Sean Daesh has told Jurgen Klopp to keep quiet and stop singling out other teams' players for criticism, calling it totally inappropriate. Watch wrestling if you like this kind of thing, he said, talking about Ashley Barnes and Chris Wood. Time running out for Arteta to save his job. You buying it?
Am I buying that time is running out? Absolutely. It is. Like, we'd be talking about a very different situation right now if there was no investment in that squad, but there's been a lot of investment, and that's the reality of the situation. Do I think that Arteta could be a good manager maybe one day? Maybe, potentially, he could be. But if Antonio Conte is to be believed, the links with him are to be believed, then you got to go get him. The problem is he will want too much control, and I don't think those in power at Arsenal will be willing to relinquish that to Antonio.
Front page of the Examiner, wise guys. Liam Sheedy and how Kylie and Kinnerk have confounded hurling's big thinkers. And Shawnee McGrath says a heavy defeat makes things appear worse than they are. So there is some hope in the wreckage of the game for the Cork hurling Conoscenti. Clubs won't let players travel. That's the headline, and it's pretty clear. City and Liverpool won't are in a standoff with FIFA over World Cup qualifiers. A reminder, OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. John Duggan is with us to talk to us about what's going on in the world of sports and a quick take on the All-Ireland hurling final. John, you were at the game?
I was, Ger and Eoin, yeah. Good morning. And I'm actually struggling a bit myself with, the way you've got power rankings on the show, and Owen's got his power rankings every week, and I have my own kind of power rankings in terms of the sports I love and where they rank, and hurling for a long time has been number 1, not by far, but number 1, and soccer will be there, and jumps racing will be up there, and golf will be up there. and then Gaelic football after that. But I'm having a bit of a struggle within myself about the way the game is played now. And it is beautiful engineering. It is magnificent skill. It is perfection from Limerick in ways. I know you talked about the wild count yesterday, but like Cian Lynch, like just flicking the ball on the ground like a pancake in a frying pan, and then just the Messi of hurling, as Kieran Kerry aptly described him before the final itself. But I just wonder, has the game lost a little bit of its soul? Is the game a roller coaster anymore? Maybe we need a close final for that to happen. I haven't really enjoyed a final as a spectacle, as a roller coaster ride since 2017 when Galway played Waterford. We're seeing beauty in a different way, but I just wonder that mad chaos that used to be what hurling was about, where you had the 50-50 balls and it was all played in the air and it was all about clearances. Remember Brian Lowe with the red helmet? Every time he'd make a clearance from the Clare full back line, there'd be almost like a point was scored. You'd hear the cheer go up. And I don't know if 332 and beautiful engineering and playing the ball out all the time is something that I feel is as enjoyable a spectacle as what I would have grown up with.
I think if Richie Hogan hadn't got sent off against Tip, that would have been a final where there was mad chaos the whole way through. I think that the Galway Limerick, pretty good.
There was a novelty to Limerick that year, I felt, as well. Like, it's an interesting point you make, John, and I do think that that's kind of like the first mission for people against this Limerick team, is to stop them scoring 332 and to bring that score down. And I think the scores will become more of a rarity as soon as they have a competitor. And as soon as they have a competitor, we'll have more roller coasters. I definitely see what you're saying. I just think that weekend we had maybe 4 weekends ago when we had the Waterford comeback and the Cork comeback. Like, that was an extraordinary day of hurling. It was absolutely fantastic. And it does seem that in some of these battles between everybody that's not called Limerick at the moment, there is still the possibility for things to explode. So I think the genesis of all this is the fact that there is one team that is far ahead of the rest. And what we're seeing is a situation like we had with Dublin in maybe the 2020 final and in the 2018 final, where they're just that bit better than the opposition on the day, and there's a lack of drama. And it tends to lead to us thinking that this style of play is boring. That's my take on it.
Now you know how the rest of us feel, basically, is what he's saying.
Yeah, 3-18 at half time. Like Limerick won all over the park. And what I really was really impressed with Limerick, they were fighting for every ball right until the end. And their defence were magnificent. I thought the half-back line was great. Sean Finn was great. And I thought the full forward line were brilliant. And then Cian Lynch is the orchestrator of the whole thing. So I'm not trying to knock what Limerick have done and the way they played. It has just gone to another place. The game has gone in 15 years to a completely different place through this academy, through all the work that John Kiley and Paul Connor have done. It is at another level. And I think with the fact that the ball is obviously travelling further in the air, and whether the boss of the hurley, it's easier to do that. It is just, it seems like an easier game to play.
Yeah.
And combine that with the fact that these players are more powerful, they're fitter, and they're more
bigger.
Skillful. The photo was of Garrett Hegarty and Matthew Clerkin. You just have this thing has gone. It's turned into a Ferrari. You know?
The other thing is that it's now totally legal to throw the ball, which was a big rule change that it's kind of gone under the radar a little bit. Where it's like it's grand. It's a bit basketball from time to time.
It's a bit tennis. Like it's up down. It's like point. 20 years ago, scoring a point from distance inside your own half was seen as something as a rarity.
Yeah. And now it's common or garden. Right, let's talk about Leona Maguire. Pádraig Harrington says it's a big thing for women's golf in Ireland.
Yeah, and I spoke to her for News Talk last night, and she's been speaking about how proud she's been to get that call from Katrina Matthew to get on the women's team, European team against the United States in Ohio in a couple of weeks' time. So she's spoken about her pride and also the reaction of her family, her parents, and her twin sister Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, they're delighted, obviously. They've backed me since day one, I suppose, and I owe a lot to them, mostly Lisa as well. Lisa's been a big part of my journey. Lisa was fortunate enough to be on two of those junior solines with me, and I would have loved to be on a real Soline Cup team with her, but she's been with me sort of every step of the way of my pro journey, and I owe her a lot as well. So this is just much hers as it is mine, and then obviously Mum and Dad have sacrificed a lot. So yeah, hopefully Lisa and Mum will get over. We're not sure yet, but they'll definitely be cheering me on the telly, and yeah, it's a nice boost for the whole family.
And for Cavan as well, Leona.
Absolutely, always for Cavan. And I suppose there's no Sam Maguire come back to Cavan this year, so hopefully we'll try and bring Solheim Cup back instead.
When you're talking about a Solheim Cup, Europe and the States, golf is very much an individual sport, Leona, as we all know. But that team room, that environment, the camaraderie, the being a teammate, that's something that Irish people are used to growing up, playing all kinds of sports. That must be something you're going to really relish.
Yeah, I mean, I love team sports. I think that was something I really enjoyed in college, being a Duke, being playing an individual sport, but being part of a team as well, having to support your teammates and being part of something that's bigger than yourself. And got a taste of that in Tokyo a few weeks ago. The camaraderie with the Irish team out there was incredible, and everybody sort of banding together and cheering each other on and egging each other on and all of that. And hopefully this Solheim Cup will be no different. I think the Europeans are always known for having that bit better camaraderie than the American counterparts. So really looking forward to it. I mean, I know all the girls on the team, we play together every week, but it'll be nice to play together with people rather than against them for 1 week of the year.
And crowds, Ohio, the Solheim Cup, Sky Sports, there surely will be maybe a little bit of butterflies on the first tee, Leona.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really know what to expect. I mean, the atmosphere, I'm sure there'll be a big chance of USA going around. We'll probably be severely outnumbered in terms of support, but at the same time, it's something that you just have to enjoy and sort of thrive off that energy and those crowds and that adrenaline rush. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be nerves on the first tee, but once we get going, settle into it quite nicely. And yeah, hopefully everybody at home can watch along and cheer us along. And even today, I mean, the support has been incredible. Irish people are the best fans in the world. I've said that before, and hopefully there's a few Irish Americans maybe that'll come out to Ohio and cheer us on.
That's class. Leon Maguire there speaking with John. John, good stuff. Thanks a million for that. Cheers.
All right, lads, take care.
That's JD giving us that, and you can hear that full thing, of course, on the OTB Sports website, and you can read John's columns every week on otbsports.com and on the OTB Sports app. Now, competition time. Umbro Ireland has unveiled the new FAI centenary jersey, and we've one to give away this morning. To be able the chance to win, name this Irish-themed mystery voice. Tweet us at Off The Ball. Who's this?
The three most, say, Leo, is it Leo? Is that his name? The three most influential Leos of my lifetime: Messi, Da Vinci, and Leo Burdock.
Tweet us your answer to win the limited edition Ireland shirt. I'm delighted to say Jonathan Courtenay is with us, the man behind the shirt. Jonathan, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, guys. How's it going?
Good. What's the response been like to the shirt so far?
There's the usual online debates about shirts when they come out, bit of vitriol, bit of people loving it as well. So it's kind of that usual mix. But I think on this occasion, it's really, and I don't mean this in any sort of patronising way, obviously, but there's a little bit of education in this because not a lot of people understand that Ireland actually originally wore blue.
Tell us about that, will you? Because that is the bit that everybody's like, right, where did this come from? And it turns out we're going back to our roots.
Yeah, exactly. So in 1880, give you a bit of a history lesson here, I suppose, but in 1880, the IFA was formed out of Belfast, which looked after football and soccer across the country of Ireland at the time. And in 1921, obviously post the War of Independence and just approaching the Civil War, there was a lot of tension, obviously, around the country for obvious reasons. So the 1921 Cup final was between Glenavon and Shelbourne, and it was in Belfast, and it was a draw. So it went to a replay, and Shelbourne insisted that it was in Dublin, and Glenavon refused to travel. So the Southern Irish teams at the time decided enough was enough, and they were going to break away and form their own association. So that would have been the likes of Shamrock Rovers, Athlone, Bohemians, St James's Gate, Brooklyn, a few teams like that at the time. So they set up, they applied in, so that was 1921, and then we had the Civil War. They applied to FIFA to be recognised as the Football Association of Ireland Free State in 1923. And this all predated, of course, World Cups and European Championships. So the premier tournament at the time would have been the Olympic Games. So the Olympics in Paris in 1924 was where Ireland made their first international game or debut, if you like. And that was a game against Bulgaria. And Ireland wore St. Patrick's blue shirts, kind of cream shorts, and they actually wore black socks. And in a kind of funny twist of fate, Bulgaria were the ones wearing green, white, green.
Right. I've never heard of the black socks before. Is that something that might make a comeback too?
No, we thought that was, I took a bit of a view on that it's not the most appealing to the eye, let's say. So I've kind of changed that to a St. Patrick's blue sock with a nice green turnover and white stripe in it, which you might be able to see over my shoulder there under the Jason McAteer ball.
Tell us a little bit about how does this actually work? When does you start trying to excavate the history to decide that this is going to be something that we can bring back to pay testimony to the history, but also that's actually going to work for people today?
Look, obviously it's the FAI centenary, so that's what the lens of which we were trying to look through. So you go back and I have from the FAI's 75th anniversary, they did a really nice book which was released and gifted around and stuff. So you can go back and you get some of the early information there. You can go back to one or two of the historians like Gary Spain and stuff like that who sent me on images of that 1924 program. And you can see the team lineup, obviously, but you can also see the kits listed under the fixture on the team lineup pages and stuff like that. So you go through all these ideas to set up the start of the design, if you like. And obviously, blue was going to be an integral part of that for obvious reasons. And there's no better time than to do it with a centenary. There's also, it's probably fair to say that in terms of the current FAI crest, it's probably not the most universally loved crest by the fans. There's a bit more of a draw back towards the Shamrock or maybe the 88 crest and stuff like that. So what we wanted to do was concentrate on really bringing a strong, bold Shamrock back into the design this time. So as you know, people think, oh, you drew a Shamrock, well done. There's a bit more to it than that. You go and look at literally thousands of different Shamrocks that have been used over the years, and then you got to remember that most people, when they're designing a Shamrock or designing something, they're designing for paper or for print. So you got to look at it slightly differently when you're going to use it on apparel and clothing. So we've done this kind of, I think it's beautiful anyway, really nice Shamrock that kind of splits in the leaves in the middle and the threads go different ways, and it gives this kind of layering 3D effect. And the Shamrock itself is sitting on what's called an applique, which is a kind of heavier twill material. And then it's embroidered on with gold, which would have been kind of similar to what was done at the time. But we've even tried to go to the detail of the embroidery itself, embroidering that on. We've kind of used an older technique. So it doesn't look perfect. And that's obviously in tune with what would have been done at the time. And so it's not meant to look perfect, but it's meant to look authentic.
Okay, the conversation around the crest is interesting. Are we transitioning back, do you think, in the future to one of those crests that is kind of paying, again, homage to the 88, the 90s, those crests?
I think that's obviously a decision for the FAI to make, and that's a whole total rebrand situation. And certainly we haven't been made aware of any conversations that are that they're looking at a change in their corporate identity. So personally, I'd like to see some sort of change at some stage. I certainly wouldn't be the biggest fan of the current crest either. I think it's not Irish enough, if that makes sense. And I would like to see something back towards the Shamrock and a strong, bold identity. But that's, as I said, that's not for me to decide. That's for the powers that be in the FAI. It
definitely seems to be the trend, though, right? That like if you looked at the Euros, the fans were all wearing retro shirts, and I know that's not a new thing, but certainly there seems to be two trends at the moment. There's like the ultra modern, and there is the let's go back to nostalgia and the warmth. And I certainly understand the desire to go back to when the world is on fire and the pandemic is sweeping. So it makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of retro stuff around at the moment, and we're bringing out with this kind of polo shirt you can probably see on me here with the 88 crest. So we're going to bring out a range in October, November, which is a really cool, interesting range. And it's not one that will be worn by the team, for example. But what I've imagined basically is we were in negotiations in the late 80s to do the FAI contract for the 1990 World Cup. And we didn't ultimately win that bid, but we did then win it the next time in 1994, after 1994 World Cup. So what I've tried to do is I've imagined or reimagined, if you like, the Umbro designs of 1990 World Cup, where like the likes of England and Scotland and others wore Umbro product, and matched that together what would have been the FAI crest at the time in the Irish colours. And that's a range, and it has obviously kind of more modern silhouettes and cuts and stuff like that and materials, but it will have that kind of 1990s look, which is still very strong if you get it on the right product. So there's a really, really cool, interesting range coming out in kind of October, which it'll be available through Elvery Sports.
It seems like that's sorry.
Well, everybody had that Umbro 1990 jersey in Wembley for the final, it seemed, more so than the new version. Or did Umbro reimagine the 1990 jersey for England this summer as well?
Yeah, it was well, obviously, once you're kind of finished with a contract, you can't remake the stuff as such. You kind of have you can team up, as we've done with there's a company called Score Draw who team up and do everything officially. So we will be bringing out replicas of the 1988 and 1990 jerseys for the FAI over the next couple of months as well. But you'll see a lot of kind of counterfeit ones online and stuff like that. But the point is, you try and do these officially, obviously, through the team. So the England ones that were around are really people buying them on eBay, and people find them in their attics and stuff all the time, as we all know. And you bring out your kid-sized jerseys that you had when you were a little fella, and stick them up on eBay. So there was a lot of that kind of stuff going on with the England thing. But there, as you said rightly, there's a huge graft for people going back and picking up the older jerseys from maybe, well, England obviously would make sense. 1990, they got to the semi-finals, great memories with Gaza and all from their point of view. And likewise with Ireland, 88 shirts and 1990 shirts are always thin on the ground because it reminds people of those great days under Jack.
So they are going to make a comeback then, and an official version of
an official one. Now, obviously, Adidas would have made those jerseys at the time, so we don't do this obviously with Adidas. So the only thing that will be off it will be the Adidas trefoil, but everything else will be done exactly the same as was done previously, and it will be official product. Obviously,
is sales the only metric of success? Like, have you designed shirts in the past that you think are class and you're happy to stand over it? They didn't sell amazing ones, and then sometimes you're thinking, this, I don't know if it's going to sell, and then it sells like mad. Is there sometimes a lag?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's definitely times where you underestimate it, and there's times where you overestimate it. So I mean, I'm trying to think of examples, live examples, but the 2016 shirt for the Euros, we knew it was a nice shirt and we knew it was strong, but that went off the scale. Like, I mean, it sold really, really well and much quicker than we thought it would. Now, there's also, you've got to temper these things with, like, we qualified for the Euros, so people were going to buy it possibly regardless how good or bad it was. So sometimes it's hard to get that exact gauge on it. But I mean, in regards to this blue jersey, for example, that we're looking at the moment, we put this up for pre-sale on, I think it was Friday, and already half have been pre-sold. So we reckon that, and this is a limited edition, obviously, there's only 2,000 of these going to go out there into the market, and with half sold online, and they're not even due to go into the stores until the 1st of October. But realistically, I think none will ever hit the shelves. I think they'll be gone before they're actually launch date, if you know what I mean. So they'll never be in the shops. And the only other metric of these things that I can kind of describe is in it would have been when we moved into the Aviva, which was, I think, 2010, maybe, if I remember correctly. In the first game against Argentina, we ran this limited edition shirt, maybe 100 pieces, which had Ireland versus Argentina and the date of the game, etc., embroidered under. And then about 2 years later, we did a pink jersey with breast cancer awareness on it. And both of those were strict limited editions. And now, in value terms, if you've got a new one of those with the tags in the bag, they're selling for 3 and 4 times the original price on eBay, if you can find one. So the collector's items plenty of people will open the box and take them out and wear them, and that's totally understandable. And a lot of people aren't buying them for an investment, obviously, but these things do, quadruple in value over maybe 7-8 years.
Is there any chance of this blue jersey becoming our away jersey?
The plan is, we are absolutely planning to wear the shirt. It's not going to be the away jersey as such. We're more likely to wear it. We're trying to wear it before the end of the year. And that's the kit's actually over with UEFA for approval, for match approval at the moment. Now, obviously, we do this all day, every day. With multiple national teams, so we know what needs to be done to get the sign off. So we're not expecting any sort of issue whatsoever with sign off. And then once we have the sign off, then we can schedule in what game it's going to be against. But that is literally TBC at this point. And with a bit of luck, we might wear it more than once as well.
Yeah. I mean, I would be all up for adopting blue as our away jersey for the next couple of years, or even a third jersey. Does that make any sense? Like the white, obviously iconic, big games in the past, but we could retire for like a couple of years, couldn't we?
Yeah, I don't see any problem with that. I mean, if you look at what a lot of teams are doing, obviously it's led, I suppose, to some degree by club football and teams now wear every sort of colour that, Liverpool wore blue a couple of years ago, which would have seemed, totally against what they would do because Everton are right next door. And so that broke down all that sort of stuff in terms of colours. I would imagine Celtic and Rangers probably won't decide to wear green or blue as their away kits. But apart from them, I think there's very few limits anymore. And I think if you looked at the Euros and looked at the different sort of styles and colours that, whether it's Portugal or England or France or whatever, wear for their away kits, I think it's kind of all bets are off. You can wear to a degree what you want. But I think that in this scenario where we're talking about the FAI's 100th year in existence, or the centenary, I think there's an absolute legit reason for wearing blue and highlighting that historical crest and just bringing something totally different to the table. We've just got to get that message out there to explain to people why they're wearing blue. Any chance of us getting a classic orange shirt at any point in the future? I wouldn't rule anything out at this point. So we like to try and mix things up. We've only actually ever done one orange shirt. So. And we all remember the game, and obviously Jason McAteer's flying kung fu kick and all that sort of stuff, and the defeat in Skopje in Macedonia. So it was an interesting shirt, and as we discussed before, that was actually the one that they all tried, when we had that massive robbery in the warehouse that they robbed or tried to rob. So we had a mixed fortune with the last one, let's just say. But I would like to certainly get that into the kit rotation at some point, because as I always say, I never see these things as political. Orange is 1/3 of our national flag. It appears all the time as a trim in the home and away shirts anyway. So I'd love to get that back in over the next year or two. Listen, we wish you the very best of luck with it. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers. Thank you, guys. Cheers. It's Jonathan Courtenay there, who's the man behind the new blue shirt. I'm going to give you one more opportunity to win it, and hopefully everybody understands exactly where it has come from now. So it's Mystery Voice. If you want to enter the competition to win one of the very limited new Ireland blue shirts, have a listen to this and tell us who it is. The three most, say Leo, is that his name? The three most influential Leos of my lifetime: Messi, Da Vinci and Leo Burdock. You just need to tweet us at @OffTheBallAM to tell us who that is. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream and we will announce a winner in the next 15 or 20 minutes if you think you can guess who that is. Do you agree? Are they the three most influential Leos of our time?
100%. It's very hard to think of anybody who ever comes close.
I guess Da Vinci, because we're still living in the world that he imagined, you would count him contemporaneous, because otherwise, I mean, he's obviously hundreds of years ago. Wouldn't be influential of our time.
Well, he's influential to Kenny Cunningham.
Oh,
is what we're
giving
talking
that
about
away there, Eoin. Good man.
Very sorry to the mystery voice person there, who has obviously,
whoever he or she may be.
Yeah, whoever he or she may be has been greatly influenced by Leonardo da Vinci, and I always wondered how he or she would specifically be influenced by da Vinci. Sketch artist.
Special awareness,
Yeah.
Always there when great things are happening. A bit like Forrest Gump, all the great Premier League goals. There's Kenny in the background.
Now you're just giving it away again.
OTB Sports, in association with Cadbury FC and their club partnerships, are returning for another series of in-depth chats with some of the biggest names in Premier League and Irish football history. With access to all areas, we chat to some of the legendary names from the big clubs and meet the crucial people behind the scenes who make a Premier League club what it is. First up, Champions League and Premier League winners Roberto Di Matteo and Karen Carney are going to join us for our Access All Areas Chelsea special, along with coach Lisa Fallon, coming to OTB Sports social channels soon. Make sure you stay tuned for that. We'll give you all the details for that. Here's what we got for you on OTB Sports Radio today. At 1 o'clock, it is Keith Andrews meets Philly. That's Keith Andrews and Philly McMahon. From 3 o'clock, there is a Dadcast. At 4 o'clock, it's a career retrospective with Joe Schmidt. And OTB Gold at 6 is Cora Staunton. We'll be back with MMA star Brian Moore in a moment.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
The guy from Bellator came down and sat beside me. He said, I'd take the draw, and I said I'd go home. I said, no. I said, this is the time. I said, if we're going to do it, now is the time, and you could sense it. Robbie, I could honestly say, is probably the best teammate I've ever had in my whole career. Like, I know I got caught badly jumping up and down like a fool in the stand. But some of that was for Mayo, but some of that was for Robbie.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
The Zone. Home of the game changers. They defy odds. Logic. Reason. They fight convention and bloody the nose of tradition. Stream your boxing your way. Anytime, anywhere, only on The Zone. Game changed. Visit DAZN.com.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, let me tell you a couple of quick comments. Brian says, lads, I absolutely love my GAA, but I also love my metal gigs in the academy. I do accept a few hundred sweaty metalheads squished indoors is a different kettle of fish. It's a good point. It is a different thing, but outdoors gigs totally fine. If
that's what I assume everybody's talking about. Yeah, I assume that's the indoor thing is totally different, but. Like, I mean, the summertime in Dublin is such an amazing time for outdoor festivals, outdoor gigs, and it's also an amazing time for the championship and for a number of different sports, for the League of Ireland during the summer, that I think that a vibrant summer was granted to one of those three things. So, like, I assume that's what everybody's talking about when it comes to that, but also... there's also like the smaller setup things that are either outdoors at a venue and stuff like that clearly are following rules that other industries aren't.
Okay, let's move on. Here's Wexford hurling star turned Bellator MMA fighter Brian Moore. Enjoy.
OTB AM.
Okay, delighted to welcome Bellator fighter Brian Moore to the show. Brian, how are you getting on?
Getting on great, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So at the end of last month, you had a pretty big win at the Forum in Inglewood, California. An iconic venue, an iconic enough win, I think, in the trajectory of your own career. Talk us through that brilliant night for you.
Yeah, it was a great night. It wasn't the fight that we had planned for, but we put a lot of work in. It was actually completely the opposite of what we had planned for. We had planned and prepared for a karate-based southpaw. And a guy who likes to wrestle, and I was given a tall, orthodox, kind of an awkward, but still very good guy with a good record. But we just adapted to it and overcame and put on a good performance, so I was very happy with it. But actually fighting in the Forum, just going back to that, it's funny because one of the guys who I studied for my fight, I always pick fighters to study, and someone who I always keep going back to is Triple G, who has such good, has such a unblemished record against southpaws. So I was studying him a lot, and the fact that he had fought in the Forum, along with, of course, Muhammad Ali and Julio Cesar Chavez. So just to share the same arena that they once did was just unbelievable.
So you go to Golovkin quite a bit when you're studying or preparing for a fight?
Yeah, so for instance, Golovkin has, like I said, an unblemished record versus southpaws, and he's fought quite a few southpaws, but also always has looked phenomenal against. If you look at someone like Mayweather, obviously he's undefeated, but his hardest fights were against southpaws. Canelo is another good example, has a good record against southpaws, but against Billy Joe and Lara, he didn't perform at his best early on. So, but if you study someone like Triple G, who has a fantastic record against southpaws, and I was fighting a southpaw. I wanted to see what he was doing well and be able to replicate it.
What do you pick up from watching him, and what do you take from Triple G that you applied on the night?
So his pressure, he makes himself a lot bigger than he actually is. So physically, he will demand the cage, and he'll put the southpaw on the defense. Well, they're try and go with their left hand, but he meets them first with a jab, and then he'll get his right hands going. When they start shelling up and they're not as loose, then he starts bringing in his left hook. So like he just systematically breaks them down. But it's his presence and his cage control, or his ring control or ring craft, that is so that works so well against the southpaw. And plus, a lot of people say that if you're fighting the opposite stance, you should use the rear hand a lot. He's a great example of someone who uses his jab with a lot of success against the southpaw. So he's phenomenal to watch.
And is your background boxing, Brian, or is mixed martial arts, has it always been your first love when it comes to combat sport?
I started MMA when I was 21. I was in college in my final year, and I become a fan of it. I watched an old UFC, and I remember studying for my final exams, and I was so bored, and I was like, right, I'm going to just take this up. I'd been begging a guy to come with me, so I wouldn't be going by myself, and he had kind of kept putting it on the long finger. So one day I just decided, right, I'm going to start it. And I started Muay Thai. I'd done it for like a couple of weeks until college finished. And then I started straight into MMA. So I don't really have a background as such. I started as a fan and just started doing all styles straight away.
It's just interesting considering you've mentioned so many boxers there that you've taken inspiration from. So I guess it was just, you were, I guess, drawn into combat sports in general without having any specific interest in one, or having a hierarchy of one over the other at the start, at least?
I was a fan of boxing from when I was a small child. I still remember, right. And I was begging my parents to bring me boxing, but I live in the middle of nowhere, so the closest town was like 30 minutes. You know what I mean? And I had a GEA training. I had a GEA field and a soccer field that was less than a 2-minute walk. So you know what I mean? It was hard for them to do it. Now, they did bring me boxing, but the next week I broke my arm playing hurling and I never went back. So I only started combat sports really when I was 21. But I always kind of say, I wish I had started, but I actually don't. I never had to take any headshots, any head trauma till I was in my early 20s, until the brain is fully developed as such. And I think that has stood to me. And I don't know what path I'd be on right now if I had started early. Maybe I would have got sick of it. Maybe, I don't know. I know where I am. I'm very happy, very fortunate. So I don't like to dwell, in the past too much.
Was there a steep learning curve though when it came to some of the basics of the sport?
Absolutely. But funnily, because I was such a fan of it, I felt like I could pick it up quite quick. I remember the first spar I ever done, we were only allowed to throw jabs, but I mean, it's like I had taken a drug. I felt so unbelievable. You know what I mean? I felt like it was a real calling, but it was a steep learning curve. I remember so well. I remember like this was yesterday. I was an amateur and I hadn't properly sparred before. So this was my first ever spar. I'd done a couple of positional ones where we were just jabbing and very light. But the first ever spar I'd done was against a world kickboxing champion, Vinny DeRuscio. I don't know if that rings a bell, but I had heard so many stories about Vinny. And when I went to spar him, I didn't know who he was. And he beat the shit out of me. He didn't go handy at all. And then I bump into him in Kilkenny here and there, maybe on a night out. I always say it to him, but he's such a nice guy. But he fucking wasn't nice that morning. That was my first ever spar. And that was a steep learning curve. But I'm glad it happened because it made me open my eyes to a lot of things. And I think maybe that's why I'm so obsessed with striking now. I never wanted to feel like that again. And I put in the work where I haven't felt like that again. You know what I mean? So, but I'm not going to thank Vinny for it, but I do remember it.
When you say there that sparring is like a drug, can you explain to people like me why it's like a drug, what exactly you're feeling in that moment?
It doesn't feel like a drug now because but I make my sparring feel as real as I can to a fight. I try and mimic the same speed. I don't try to use as much power like I would in a fight, but I try to make myself like unbelievably nervous as I would be before a fight. So when I'm going up and I'm driving up in the car on the way to Dublin, I try and mimic the nerves that I feel. I talk to myself like it's going to be a fight. And I'm a 10-year veteran now, 21 fights in, and I still get nervous before sparring because of that. Because I don't want it to be different than a fight. But back then, when I just started this sport and we would get into, light spars or even technique, it felt like a drug, because it was something I longed to do for so long, and now I was finally doing it. And just give you like an insane high. I had played sports since I was 5 competitively. I was good. Like I played intercounty GAA, played a good level of soccer, even had a good golf game. But I never, experienced what I experienced in those first couple of spars. Remember the first spar I done? I quit GAA. I quit everything after doing it for 16 years. Just stopped there and then, because I wanted to chase that again and again and again.
And were you playing with Wexford at that point when you were a county? Or was it underage star you were, Brian?
I was under 17 and under 18 for football, and like under 14 for hurling. But I played very well under 17. I was the free taker for Wexford as well. And then under 18, I was on the panel and on the fringes of the team, kind of on and off the team. But played a good high level. And then the club that I was with at the time, I had a very good outfit for both senior, and I was playing for them as well. So it was something that was just kind of bred into me since I was 5. And I do still love GAA, but as soon as I came across martial arts, that was it. That was the end of it.
Was there ever any temptation on the GAA side of things about the status of being a county minor to draw you back into the sport, to stop you from hanging up the Wexford jersey, as it were?
Not really. I do have to admit, when I was, a teen, what people thought of me mattered. While now I couldn't give a rat's ass what people think of me. Only my family and like my as long as I'm not doing anything, crossing the line as such. But I remember when I was that age and when I did move into martial arts, like a lot of my friends that were teammates of mine in GA, we lost touch, we lost contact. A lot of them had a lot of strong words to say about the decision that I made. But I stand by the decision to this day, and thankfully I've made friends with a lot of these guys since. Some of them haven't, but it's the decision I made, and I followed my heart, and I'm here today as a professional athlete, making a living with this, and I'm very happy with the decisions I made.
It's turned out pretty well, to say the least. What sort of things would they be saying to you when you left?
I remember one guy said, "I think you're crazy." One guy called me an idiot. I just remember it so clear. But I don't really blame them. Back then, well, I do and I don't. Back then, even now, I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of people that it's not grown as much as it has in other parts of the country, like in Wexford. There's to date, I'm the only professional mixed martial artist in the county, which is I think it will come. And there's a lot of good martial artists, and I think if they just crossed into different disciplines, it would become more of a regular thing. But back then, it was just such a new thing. People didn't know what the hell I was doing. They didn't know whether I was doing taekwondo or tai chi or strongman. They didn't know what I was doing. They didn't know what MMA was. And we're here now. I remember the first MMA show that was in Wexford. Me and 2 friends were on it as amateurs. And people couldn't fucking believe what they were witnessing, you know what I mean? So
that is something you've tapped into quite a bit during your mixed martial arts career, the pride of being the only fighter from County Wexford. And even I've seen pictures of you in the GAA jersey, and I think you have a 1798 tattoo as well. This is something you've really tapped into as part of your own identity.
Yeah, I'm a very, very proud Wexford man. It's hard not to be. I was obsessed, I still am, with the 1798 Rebellion. I know all the songs. I was made sing them in school, you know what I mean, by myself, all this kind of stuff. I live in Banno, which is where the 1169 invasion of the Normans happened. I'm surrounded by 1798 battlefields. It's very hard not to be, surrounded by it and take a lot of pride in it. And I choose to fight. These men and women were forced to. So when I think of how brave they were doing what I do, even though I get very nervous and whatnot, is it's handbags compared to what those people were forced to do. But I take a lot of pride being a Wexford man and a fighter from Wexford.
Was it really in school where that interest in history sparked, or were there family links or any other influences?
Both my mother and my auntie, for instance, used to sing PJ McCall songs such as Bula Vogue and Kelly the Boy from Clan. PJ McCall was obviously he's dead a very, very, very long time, but his cottage was situated in the parish where I was born. So there was strong links from the family side of things, but in school also, we would have learned all the rebel songs like 798 songs like Bula Vogue, for instance, and it just stayed with me. I know a lot of people, a lot of friends, a lot of family don't really, they're not that interested in it, but it's something that's just always stayed with me. And then the more you delve deep into like the individuals involved in the rebellion, the more interesting it becomes. You know what I mean? There's so many brilliant stories about it.
And your nickname is the Pikeman. I presume that's also a nod to the rebellion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like that's where most of the rebellion took place, in County Wexford. I was at its strongest in Wexford, so yeah. And it was a pretty obvious nickname given at the end of it.
It's really interesting. I know that we started here talking about the form in England, and we've got kind of thrown off course here massively, but I do want to go back to that because that in itself is just a really interesting confluence of events, really. Jordan Vinsky, the guy you ended up fighting in the end, you mentioned how you had to dig down into the style you were up against. But what makes that even more fascinating is that he wasn't the first or the second opponent you were due to fight in California.
Yeah, when I arrived in I didn't have an American SIM card, so I didn't have data or anything like that. So when I literally arrived at the hotel, I put in my Wi-Fi, went up the stairs, and as I put my key card in the door, like ding, 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 my whole phone started just going crazy. Like people messaging, like my wife messaging how I landed, etc. But John's messages started coming up, my coach, and all I could see was Scoggins, COVID, out, and then like a Tapology record of the next opponent. And I was like, shit, okay, let's take a breath now and have a look. But I was offered a guy, he was 20 wins, 5 losses. He was ranked number 1 in Japan, number 2 in Russia. And we said yes. And then he pulled out. So in stepped Jordan Winsky. But I said it to one of the Bellator guys, I goes, if you're replacing this guy, I goes, don't give me some scrub, some guy who's going to step in with a poor record. Give me someone good. And Winsky had beaten 2 former UFC fighters. He has a good record. He was 11-2, experienced, good wrestler, good striking. So I was happy to take that challenge on,
There was also an opportunity for you to not fight and take the money. But not only did you want to fight, you wanted to fight the best possible opponent.
Yeah, I'm not like I'm the luckiest man in the world to have the family that I have. So being away from them takes a lot of dedication, a lot of sacrifice, and I'm not giving up all that time and effort to go and sit in a stand in Inglewood and look at people fighting after me putting in that effort. So I was there for one reason and one reason only, and that was to fight. So I could have took half my purse and my show money and sat there and enjoyed it, but I wouldn't have enjoyed it. I would have been my mind would have been racing of the ifs and whens, and so I'm really happy to have performed and won that night.
What are the medium-term objectives then, Brian? I know that there is obviously a Bellator card slated for Dublin in November. Fingers crossed there'll be a full Irish crowd for the first time since, February last year in the 3 Arena. Even beyond that, what have you got your sights set on?
My goal is the gold belt, and never have I felt more confident. It's funny because 21 fights. This is my 21st fight, and I looked back at my performance and I was very happy with it. First time ever. Maybe I'm getting a little bit easier on myself. I don't think so, the way I push myself in training, but I could see that I could see the work I'd put in had went on, and I'd done very well. And I really think that I can beat any man at 135 pounds in the world. I really do think that. UFC, Bellator, whatever it is, but I'm rooted in Bellator now. I'm very, very happy. I don't want to be anywhere else, and I really want to get that gold belt. And I think I beat any of them on my day. And with the dedication, the time, the focus, the effort, etc., I feel like I'm only coming into my prime. I think I beat all of them.
How much of a slight on you was it when the Bellator fighter rankings came out for the bantamweight division and you weren't included in the top 10 challengers?
Yeah, look, I'm not surprised in a sense, and I am surprised in another way. That was that was a great performance I put on. I shut the guy out from start to finish. Was never in any bother. I made it an exciting fight. and I beat a guy with a really good record at 11-2. He was. So to go out and beat him 30-26, dominate him, and not be ranked ahead of guys who were 5-2 and 6-0 and who haven't really fought anyone, it annoyed me. But I used that opportunity to call out one of these guys in the rankings. I simply said, cool, if you think that this guy is beat better than me, you have him ranked ahead of me, okay, make him fight me. And we'll see then how true these rankings are. And I'm not the only one at bantamweight that should be ranked. There's other guys too. There are other really good 135 pounders that should be ranked without a doubt there. And in other divisions, other guys should be included in the rankings. I don't know which way they're working the criteria, but it doesn't make much sense in my eyes and many other people's eyes too.
We should say as well that these aren't like official from Bellator rankings. They are writers around the game. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, there's like 14 journalists that were selected. A lot of people who were asked didn't do it, so it's these guys and they're putting the rankings together. It's funny because I wasn't ranked, and then I was, and then I was taken off the rankings with inactivity, and then after a great performance like that, wasn't put back in. But look, my goal is this, and it's you asked me about goals. My goal is to win every fight, and the more I win, the less people can ignore me. And I've had that mindset now for the last about 5 fights. People are talking about a 3-fight win streak that I'm on. Technically, I think it's a 5-fight win streak. I broke my hands in that fight where I was clearly winning. If I hadn't broken the 2 of them, I was winning. I was even winning when it was just 1. So even since I've made that switch of just winning every fight and not worrying about everything else, just if you win, everything else will look after itself in regard to rankings and title contention and belt, and it's working. So
you mentioned the guys who are 6-0 and 5-2. Jornell Lugo is 6-0. Cass Bell is 5-2. They're ranked 8th and 9th respectively on that rankings. I presume you would fight either of those in Dublin this autumn and beat either of them in Dublin.
There's only one man who I wouldn't fight on them rankings, and that's my teammate James Gallagher, and everyone else is fair game. I'll fight number 1 to number 10, no problem. And outside that, either. I'm the kind of guy, and I'm not just saying it, I fought anybody, anytime, anywhere. You look at my 2 fights in Dublin, they were both short notice fights against top 5 in the world. So fighting one of these guys, no problem. You know what I mean? I called for Cass Bell. I've called for Jornell Lugo before. I don't know how much more calling I need to do, but at the end of the day, give me any of these guys, any of them.
The thing is as well that Bellator realised the unbelievable power of a home fighter in that arena with fans there. Like I was there in the last fight, in the last event they had. It feels like kind of like a couple of weeks only before the pandemic last February, and the home crowd feeling in that venue is absolutely incredible when it's packed to the rafters. That there is a huge value in what you will bring to proceedings, and it could be an even more seismic moment for your career were you to win in that venue this year.
I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not 100% sure whether I'll be fighting in Dublin or not. Because I've just had a fight and there's a lot of other guys to fight.
Right.
A lot of Irish guys that are under contract and whatnot. But I think it would be a huge shame if I wasn't. I'm on the crest of a wave. I really genuinely think that I'll be fighting for a title very soon. And I think it will make it for a great homecoming. And I've stepped up when no one else has on 2 occasions to save shows in Dublin. Once against AJ McKee when I was sick, once against Daniel Voichel on very short notice, making my Bellator debut. So I really think that I should be included in this Dublin show, but not just for those reasons. It's for the reason that I'm on a tear at the minute, and I'm going to continue that. And this could set up something huge. So and the last thing I'll ask, my inbox is gone bananas from people from Wexford that are supporting me, that want to get behind me, that are wanting to travel to the Tree Arena. The place will be covered in purple and gold. I'm sure of that. If that was the case, so I'm hoping Bellator will put me on it. I think it's more than deserving, to be perfectly honest.
They'll be dancing at the crossroads if you get the job done in the Tree Arena. Just one last thing, Brian. How do you then handle that over the next little while? Just that little element of uncertainty. Do you have, I don't know, a default training program now after you're fully rested up, or how does it work?
I have a default mode, and that's hard work. I go back to training. That's my thing. People have their thing. People go golfing on the weekends. People, whatever, listen to music, do whatever. I train. I love training. I took last week off and it was hard. I went back training yesterday and it was easy. I love it. And I'm not just saying that, but I built a gym right beside my house there, so I could do even more training. I'm obsessed with it. I'll do it till the day I die. I just love training. So that's default mode. And going back to study fighters like we talked about at the start of this, like Golovkin, like Sugar Ray Robinson, Roy Jones Jr., like Damian Maia, like these guys that I look up to, Ben Askren, looking at these guys and taking technique and trying to put it into my own game. So I'll just go back to default mode, and that's hard work.
Brian, it's been fascinating catching up with you and getting to know your story really actually today. We really wish you all the best over the next little while. It's going to be a very, very interesting few months for you, hopefully. Thanks a million for taking the call.
Thanks so much.
OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Brian Moore there chatting with Eoin yesterday, and big things coming from him. The crossover between GAA and MMA, it's becoming ever more pronounced.
Yes, I guess Padraig O'Hara will become the biggest proponent of that now if he wins the All Ireland this year. He's already the number one guy, right? Or am I missing someone?
Philly was doing some. Cormac Costello was doing some training, wasn't he?
Was he?
At various stages. And then Geezer, obviously.
Oh yeah,
he's the alpha.
He is, absolutely.
Everybody after him.
Yeah, Padraig O'Hara, I guess, almost put the cart before the horse with respect to MMA and GAA. We were, he's definitely the hardest man in GAA right now, isn't he, Padraig O'Hara? He is the new Geezer. And MMA is obviously the common denominator.
Well, look, if it ain't broke. Matthew says, excellent point, Owen, but still hard for League of Ireland fans to take where the attendances are limited to 500 and have been for a long time. So you can understand our frustration. I think that was the point that I was making at the start. He understands everybody's frustration and everybody shares the same frustrations. And actually, the point about setting the GAA fans versus the live gig fans versus the League of Ireland fans, when actually we're all citizens and we're all hoping that we might begin to see some articulated reasoning behind what's happening and a better plan and a quicker plan. That's all we're asking for, right?
I think that's what everybody wants to see at the moment, and I absolutely take that point. It does seem that there is a discrepancy there between the two things, and like as I said earlier on, I can kind of understand why people think that the GAA are getting preferential treatment, because there's evidence to suggest that is absolutely the case right there. It's just, why hasn't everybody else got that same treatment, rather than being like, why doesn't the GAA get the same treatment as everybody else? I think everybody should, like, the rising tide should lift everybody else,
Exactly, yeah.
Maybe that's just a way too optimistic view to take, given
we should demand that.
The current situation. Well, see, the thing is, I literally just do not know what is going to happen next, and I'd hate to think that we're in kind of like a precarious enough situation. I've seen a number of people writing over the course of the last few days that it's like, God, August 2021 sort of feels like August 2020. That sort of real summer optimism that's just being chiseled away at there. Obviously, there is one big reason why things are different now, and that is the vaccine. But I can see why people might be getting a little bit hot under the collar at the moment, thinking about what might happen next. And the fact of the matter is, I don't know what's going to happen next. I just think that if we all look at this in an optimistic way, I think that there is enough reasoning out there to suggest that everybody should be getting what the GAA is being afforded.
All right. Wayne Ryan is the winner of the Umbro Ireland shirt competition. We'll be in touch with you a little bit later on this morning. He correctly identified this voice.
The three most, say, Leo, is that his name? The three most influential Leos of my lifetime.
It is Connie Kenningham.
It is,
Messi,
indeed.
Da Vinci, and Leo Bordock.
I'd say everybody who's heard this today is going to have fish and chips tonight because of Kenny Cunningham. That's the type of... If only Kenny was on Instagram, he would be a smash hit, and he could be one of Ireland's leading influencers.
We haven't heard from Kenny in a long time. I'm going to miss Kenny. I miss his power rankings of North Dublin culinary delights. Must get him back on at some point soon to just update the rankings on Leos and food.
Best places to get a full Irish, best places to get a cream bun, and best places to get a single. Right, keep an eye out for our Paralympics coverage with Toyota Ireland. All kicks off tomorrow. The opening ceremony, of course, is later today, and huge levels of expectations around the Irish team who are travelling out. It's a team which is festooned with experience and also some brand new talent that we really hope is going to be delivering medals. So tune in early and often to that, and we'll be bringing you updates every day on OTB AM and of course on the radio on Off the Ball and Newstalk, all in association with Toyota Ireland. Subscribe to the OTB AM podcast. You can get it on the OTB Sports app. It's free, it costs you nothing. You hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, and then you get the full podcast of the show every morning, and you get it also broken up into nice little bite sizes for you if that's all you want. And you can subscribe to the OTB YouTube channel as well, so youtube.com/Off the Ball, and you'll never miss out. Here's Pat Nevin talking about the rough and tumble that he's enjoying of the new Premier League season. Enjoy.
Oh, you know who on a Monday? That's you, Pat Nevin. You're you know who.
Yeah, I've kind of missed the music a wee bit. I've not had it that often recently.
Yeah.
First of all, you completely spooked me because I always get you up on camera and all I can see is a jockey's hat.
Oh, sorry. Whatever Skype we've connected you to, you're on the wrong camera. I'm way over to your left. Just imagine me.
Very strange. Anyway, I believe you're there. I absolutely believe you're there. And I am definitely here. Yes, but it's good to be around. It's good to be around today. It's kind of been a good weekend, a weird weekend for the football. Can I tell you one thing? You got to follow me which football games I'm going to now, right? So
okay.
I've been to 3 games this season. 6-0, 5-1, 5-0. The goals are basically following me around at the moment. It's brilliant. Everywhere I go, there's just millions of goals. I'm not saying they're all the best games I've ever seen, but there's loads and loads of goals.
Well, I'll come to all that. Can I kick things off on a theme Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Jurgen Klopp agree on? The game has gone too physical, so we'll kick things off here. Yesterday's game, Solskjaer in his post-match press conference, he was asked about that Jack Stevens challenge and Bruno, which obviously led to the Southampton goal. So here's a bit of Ole for you.
We should do better. You know, if you don't get a foul, we should make sure we block the shot, put your body on the line and make sure they don't get a strike on target. That being said, it's a foul. He goes straight through Bruno, his hip, and with his own hip and his arm across him. And I'm a bit, not worried, but we have to look at it, and because we can't go from one extreme, volleyball or basketball from last year, and go into rugby now.
That's Exhibit 1, so rugby is his fear. And then speaking of BT Sport, here's Jurgen Klopp. He was asked if he thought the increased contact in the game and in the box on Saturday's game was a good thing for football. Have a listen.
We need to get used to it, but I think we have to think about it maybe a second or a third time. But it's always like this. There's one message now, let the game flow. And now nobody knows exactly what does that mean. Obviously, that's fine, there's no foul anymore, and this kind of things. That's always like it was. But I'm not sure. So I like all decisions in favor for the offensive team. That's fine. Like offside now, and this kind of we get back to that. Yep. Or in doubt that you don't know, then the striker is right. So these kind of things. But we have to stick to protecting the players. We cannot deny that completely and say, well, that's a challenge. I love watching that. Then watch wrestling if you like these kind of things.
Exhibit 2, wrestling. Rugby and wrestling. Can we get a grip of this, please? What have you made of Operation Let It Flow?
I love it. I'm on board, big style. Rugby and wrestling, I'm like, come on, look, if you watch Irish sports, right, like football now has gone so soft, it's ridiculous. This is kind of clawing a little bit back. It's nowhere, he says it's just like, I think it was always says it's just like the old days. No, it's not. No. It's not even close. It's not even in the same ballpark. It's almost a different sport. Look, I understand if you have been going through football for a period of time, and maybe particularly the last 10, 15 years, it is very much a non-contact sport. But the thing is, the cheats, the feigners, the fakers are winning. And they've been winning for quite some time. And it had to be addressed at some point in time. Now, they're addressing it just now. I think it was Jurgen's point there, where he said, look, you can go too far the other way. And that's what happens. You lurch sickeningly, and you go too far the other way. Personally, I don't think so. I mean, I actually punched the air the other week there when it was Watford were playing against Aston Villa, and it was the final goal of the game. One of the Watford players went down looking for a foul. Wasn't a foul. And then he got up, pretending he was injured, and then he wasn't injured, and then he made this terrible attempt at a tackle, and they score off it, right? And I'm like, see if you'd have been standing up, see if you just got up and got on with the game instead of rolling about, you wouldn't have lost a goal. Yeah. I hope you've learned a lesson. But it's going to take a wee bit longer than that. Get on with it. I don't think it was a foul on Fernandes. I think last season it was a foul. That's the way the rules were. But the vast majority of football history, that's not a foul. No. You just weren't strong enough. No. And you got the ball. You just threw your body in front of it. So I kind of like it. There is one big downside. My downside isn't the one that everyone else, some of the managers, etc. And by the way, I respect the position. And I respect the fact that you want to give a little cover to, skillful players. It kind of helps. But it's kind of gone too far in many, many ways. And I think, anyway, that's certainly the way I enjoy watching my professional football. But there's a problem. And the problem is, everybody in every league, in every country, has to do it the same. Because what will happen is if the English referees referee it in this way, which is slightly more robust, and it is only slightly more robust, allow things to go on a little bit more. And then they go and play in European football in the Champions League, and nobody else is doing it, then you've got a problem. Because you've got two different sets of players looking at two different rules. And that's where we were 15 to 20 years ago.
It's true. For younger listeners, there was definitely an era of, well, you can't get away with that in Europe.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly how I felt about it. That I would have wanted them to move closer to where the British style was, but we didn't. Everything moved that way. And I actually think over the last few years we've overshot it, and we've become that if anyone's touched, it's a foul. Yeah. If anyone is on the ground, it's a foul. There's one or two referees last season that were letting it flow a little bit more, and I just thought, yeah, you are getting it. It makes it a more exciting, entertaining game. It's not stupidly more dangerous. It really isn't stupidly more dangerous. The bad fouls and the extreme stuff, they'll still get done, and that will not change. So I'll accept an opinion, and it's a completely subjective point of view, and Ollie has got that point of view, and Jurgen's got that point of view. But you're allowed to have another one, and I suspect one or two people, and I suspect quite a few fans will have an alternative point of view to that, which is, do you know what, Joe? And people out here listening, tell me if it's true. How often have you met people in the last 10 or 15 years that say, "No, I don't watch football anymore. I can't be bothered with it. It's just they're just rolling about. It's just screaming and squealing and acting and fainting." Think about it. We've all met people like that. We've pushed these people out, and I don't think they should have been pushed out because they love the game. And I'm kind of happy with this. Now, as the season goes on, I suspect what will happen is, they'll roll back a wee bit because it's really been allowed to be quite robust at the start of the season. I think they'll roll back a wee bit, but I'm kind of happy they've made an attempt because it was driving me nuts. And do you know what one thing I'd love to say? The amount of times I said to people, "Can't be bothered with diving," I would look at that in VR and I'd send them off, and I'd even do it retrospectively. And people say to me, "You're a dinosaur, you're living in the past, that's not the way it is." And now I can say, actually, I was ahead of the game. I'm delighted with that.
Yeah, it's such a better product rather, because I found myself, I was working in here and wanted to watch the United Southampton game, the 90 minutes, and watched it back. And there were several challenges in that game where instinctively I braced myself for, another stop and play. The referee's going to blow that kind of shoulder challenge, a little bit of physicality in midfield up. I'm not talking about, as you said, the bad tackle or over the ball or stud showing or being out of control, just that little bit of contact, this once physical game. And it was such a pleasant surprise when play continued. I don't think they're going to roll back for two reasons. I think one, the media, which is often at the forefront of putting the pressure on, is very supportive of this change. So I don't think the referees are going to get slammed by the media. I think they'll sense the media and the fans at large are with them, and I think that's a huge thing. And secondly, I would put it to you, and you're the player here, I think players will very quickly start to adjust to the new reality. Like, I'm not sure Bruno Fernandes, well, I might be picking the wrong example here, but I'm not so sure he'll go down as quickly in anticipation of getting the free because there's been a hint of contact. I think he might realise, well, I'm pretty close to my goal here, I don't want to lose possession, I'm going to get my body in front a bit quicker and fight for this ball a bit more.
I've watched games already where it's taken them less than half a game to think, okay, that's the rules today. Oddly enough, I often make the comment during the FA Cup, well, we're on FA Cup rules, are we? I.e., it's like the way we're doing it just now, because the referees just referee it differently, particularly the lower league teams, accept a little bit more. But let's just get on with it. The players don't. They just think, all right, that's the rules now. That's the way we're doing it now. Players are not stupid. They are. They are professionals at what they do. And if you start a game, and the referee's one of the referees who gives a foul every time anyone goes down, people just keep on going down because they get foul. As soon as they're in danger, they just throw themselves to the ground as soon as someone's near them. When after 3 or 4 tackles the referee's waving the play on, they kind of don't even need to look at each other. They just go, all right, it's one of them. Get on with it. You adapt to the refereeing. Now, that's actually been happening before. That's happened with different standards and strengths of referees. Now this is a big shift. This is quite a noticeable shift. The players have shifted. I'm absolutely no doubt about it. And it was interesting watching some of the games at the weekend very, very quickly. Now, in the midst of this, I also accept the argument that we've done all this to give the creative players a chance. And I understand that. But in actual fact, they've manipulated it too far. It's like most things in life. Give somebody an inch and take a mile. And that's what's happened with some of the more creative players. And I say that as someone who is purely a creative player. But given an inch, taking a mile, it has to be rolled back. So I'm interested to see it. What has been interesting, John, what's really got me and surprised me, I think there's been big buy-in from the referees. That's the bit that got me. I thought there'd be a few that are thinking, no, this is how I referee it. But in actual fact, it's as if a lot of them they've been working under orders for a long time. And now they think, actually, now I can allow a little bit more subjectivity. I can allow a bit more physicality. I actually think they're enjoying it.
That's a great point. I hadn't really thought of that. I'd say they're back to a game they recognise.
Yeah, and I totally agree. The thing is, see if they didn't do it soon, a whole generation of referees would have grown up not getting it. And it would have been hard to go back to something they didn't know and didn't understand, that there can be contact in a football game. There can be a challenge and someone can go down and it might not be a foul because the guy got the ball and you just got on with it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the subtleties within it. That's what the great referees have always understood. The tackle with the left foot and the right foot comes through and hammers you. That's still a massive foul, and that's still a booking, and that's still maybe even a sending off. But it's clever enough to say that. But the foul, the tackle where your body weight comes through, and the player is taken down, but you've taken the ball clean and you're away, that's not a foul.
No.
Not now, again, which is great news.
Yeah, it's great. Like it's so good. I'm just thrilled that this has happened. I didn't know this was coming. They didn't signal this in a big way, or else I missed it over the summer. So it's just been this wonderful surprise, as opposed to some stupid new handball interpretation, which causes havoc for a month. So Manchester United put in a very Manchester United performance across the opening 2 games here. Very impressive. And we did say last week, well, Leeds really do suit United down to the ground. Would they stop dropping silly points in certain places? And then out they go, 1-1 against Southampton, and very flat, you would have to say, in that first half in particular. Pat, what was your read on this performance? A lot of pundits have pointed to Fred and Matic in particular in that central midfield area as lacking, but this just undermines any sense of faith you might have in United this season.
And Fred had a really good game in that game that I was at against Leeds United. But McTominay or Matic, I'm not too sure. Matic, fabulous player, he has been for many, many years, but you'd rather have the legs of McTominay in there, and that would make a big difference. So maybe, it's a difference. Sometimes you've made the wrong choice to put the players in. And they've not got massive mobility, them too, and that makes a difference as well. But, it's away from home. It's against a team that are up for it. It's good to see that, Southampton could have been a bit of a concern, a bit of a worry, but in actual fact, they looked lively, and certainly up front, they look really sharp up front, and they look intelligent up front. But yeah, United, after that signal, none of us did get carried away. We just thought, no, that's Leeds, let's wait a wee while. It's not that Leeds are a bad team, it's exactly what we said. But looking at them just now, the big if is still Fernandes and Pogba together. And there were moments, weren't there? There were moments where they were brilliant in the Southampton game. They did some great stuff. And there were fabulous little moments. that sounds a way back to what we were saying last time. It's bits here and there, and maybe it's a whole game now and again, but it really has. It's a lack of dominance of teams. You watch the game yesterday, the Arsenal-Chelsea game yesterday, and you see dominance. You watch Man City, you see dominance, and you see it for a lot of their games. And the problem is with Man United, they are a kind of breaking team, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're not a dominant team, they're a breaking team. And that's sometimes we just play against you, and it doesn't work. Because eventually when you've got dominance and all the play, you exhaust teams and they make mistakes, etc. Look, it's not a nightmare, it's not a disaster, everyone will drop points, but that start where you thought, right, the top four are going to absolutely run away from everyone and Man United will be one of them. It might still be the case, but they'll still drop points. They're not madly far ahead.
No, that dominance point is exactly right. That's the theme of last year. They're a team with great moments in them because they have so many great players. I often watch games now, and I'll be chatting to you from a winger's point of view, just to see what's going on. And I was thinking to myself, I was watching the lot of Theo Walcott and Gineppo for Southampton, thinking, I'd say Pat Nevin hated those games where they're in a 4-4-2 and the wingers are very narrow, but every single time the ball is passed out to a Luke Shaw or a Wan-Bissaka, Theo Walcott or Gineppo have to sprint out to them, and then they knock it back inside, and the boys have to trot back in, and then it's knocked out wide again and sprint back out to them, and then back into a narrow flat four. And I just thought, that is a miserable assignment with not much fun for a winger.
Funnily enough, there are teams that you play with, and that is just the structure. I mean, I have to say, for a large period of my time with Everton, that was the structure, but we got a little bit more of the ball at home, and then you would be able to dominate yourself and get more possession high up. But yeah, you spent a lot of time being double covered on the fullbacks and make sure that, your fullback behind you gets cover. You kind of need to do it, but you also need to decide the times. Yes, it's structured, but there's now and again, there's a time you think, okay, I should do that a lot. Sometimes you think, actually, that might not be necessary. A classic example was the game I was at this weekend. And I promise you, I was doing the commentary. 40 seconds into the commentary, I said, Norwich City have got a problem at left back. 40 seconds in the commentary. And I hadn't even get teams out yet. And I went, that left back doesn't know where to stand. And I'd watched Pep run over to the side. And see if you have got, there's a point to this. See the winger who was playing in front of him, he wouldn't come back and cover. The fullback was having he's not to that level. So the fullback, and I noticed they brought a left back. I got Brandon Williams in from Man United today. No surprise there. But the winger wouldn't come and help him. So it was like, if your fullback, for whatever reason, having a nightmare, he just happens to be up the wrong type of person, or you're playing a very specific structure, and the wide player in that four doesn't come back and cover in front, you're knackered. You're absolutely and utterly stuffed. So now and again, you've got to do it. And you just shrug your shoulders and go on with it, do it. And you're right. They had to do it at Southampton. It was right to do it because they had to kill that space. They had to cover that space. And to be honest, they've done it. It was a job. And sometimes you just shrug your shoulders and do a job. We've all done it. I always remember having to do it against John Barnes at Liverpool. I would just run and run and run and run and run and close and close and close. And it would be him, and then as soon as the fullback gets the ball, I'm on to Ronnie Whelan or whoever it is and get close to him. Sometimes you need to sell yourself, really. Just say, no, that's my job today.
So what did you make of City? What did you make of Grealish? What were your takeaways from their 5-0 win?
It's not a good gauge. It really isn't. They started really sharp, a really high tempo. Now, how many times you go to see City? I go to see City quite a lot at home, and they've got this thing about strangling teams, just pass, and strangle them, and then they turn off, and they eventually get through, and they get 1, 2, maybe a third one. Wasn't like that this time. Pep's changed it. It's really high up, close. It's back to the high pressing again. Now, you might not continue that for the whole season. It might have suited well against Norwich, but it was a real high energy thing, and the game was finished by the time they got the first couple of presses and they got the first couple of goals, and they found where the weaknesses were. Because when you press good players, will pass by you, but when you press players that aren't quite so good, you immediately think there's the problem. So Grealish, problem for him is he wasn't playing against the left back, and City knew where the problem was. So everything's going down the right, and it was Gabriel Jesus who were playing out there. So Grealish did a few things, and he gets his goal, etc. But he actually wasn't going by people as much as he would normally do. And I get a feeling with Grealish, it actually shows a wee bit of maturity. All the tricks aren't coming out yet. It's a bit like, okay, I'm surrounded by a lot of geniuses here. I'm not going to walk in and say I am the big I am. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to play my way into it. And I think Pep says that to them as well sometimes. I've watched him with some players that, they've got a bit about them. And you think, well, wait a minute, can I get a wee bit more off of you? And the reason it's not a wee bit more is because Pep says to him, you come into this team, you don't completely control the team as soon as you come in. And you feel part of it, understand the whole, and then you can allow all the kind of all the tricks and flicks to come on. There was a player come on, I don't know if you get a chance to see it, it's Cole Palmer. If anyone's not had a chance to see this kid, there's another one to really watch out for. He's got a phenomenal ability to find those areas that City love to play in. And I think he's 18 and he's just come on and he's not the new De Bruyne, right? But he just gets into those positions and he has got such energy and he's lightning quick with a big, long loping strike. This kid's going to be good. This kid's going to be really special.
Clock's already against us. I knew it would be. We only have about 2 minutes, but we have to touch on, I suppose, the story of the weekend in many ways, which is Chelsea and Lukaku. And I presume you liked how you hit the ground running pretty seamlessly.
Right, well, okay, everybody knows he played against the perfect team, and the tactics against them were stupid and simple, and just let the ball at the feet, right? So it's a dream scenario for him. But see if he does all that, exactly what he did there, which is, do what... This is not new. Play it up to your centre forward, hold the ball in, hold a few people off, lay off to people that are coming onto you, and then turn and get in the box. That's ancient stuff, man. That's just ancient, right? That's just the oldest one in the book. John Toshak used to do that for Liverpool, right? And if you're allowed to do it. So if he gets to do that and gets space to do that, he's going to be great. To be honest, his energy and his attitude was brilliant. But I'm still going to hold off. I'm going to hold off. I remember, and there's a word for him just now. There is a word for him. Playing the World Cup, I went to see him in the World Cup over in Russia. And he was, for a couple of games, unplayable. Completely. That's the word. Totally unplayable. Nobody could get near him. Could he do that every 3 days? No. Absolutely not. And there were some games and we know that about him now over the years. The chat is, that's changed because he's been in Italy, because they found out about his dietary problems, because people have got to understand he's matured, all that sort of stuff. We wait to see if that is the case. And also, Chelsea can rest him. Chelsea can rest him and make no blind bit of difference to them because they've got enough quality there. If they use him right and he keeps that energy that he's shown there for the right big games, he could be fantastic for them. He could make them a much stronger side.
Let's pick up on that bit more next Monday. Lukaku and Chelsea, we're kind of out of time.
I'll be at the Liverpool-Chelsea game, so
perfecto.
Very close.
Great. Well, 9:01 tomorrow, Liverpool-Chelsea talk. That's where we're starting. Thanks a million, Pat. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
OTB AM. With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved